escape from reality.
I'm not really sure how I feel about episodic games, despite having played quite a few of them when the trend was first starting. For TV, no question, 10 out of 10 times I would prefer a mini-series like Chernobyl or The White Lotus versus a movie about the same subject or similar plotline. It just feels like there's more room to breathe, develop characters better, and it allows creators to maybe make some unpopular artistic choices for one episode without ruining the rest of the series. However, with any series, you're inevitably going to run into two things: a series being cancelled before it gets proper closure, and unbearable cliffhangers that will consume your soul until the next episode comes out. And for the record, a game with sequels is not the same as an episodic game. Episodic games sometimes end up being the length of a full release by the end, but it gets the content out bit by bit. If a game is 10 plus hours long and has sequels years later, that's not really the same thing. So don't go comparing Mass Effect to the Telltale Minecraft game. That's not really what I'm talking about. Another thing with episodic games is the release schedule. I'd much rather play a game for 40 hours on my own time and then wait 2 to 3 years for the next one, rather than play a game for 2 hours and then have to wait 6 to 8 months for 2 hours more. But despite all this, I'm a sucker for it. I gotta admit, there's a certain hype when you're in between episodes and you get to chat with all your friends about what choices you made and predict how it's all gonna play out, just like when we were nearing the season finale of Game of Thrones or something like that. It's nice that you don't have to wait as long to get these conclusions in between the releases of episodes, although that entirely depends on the developer and the franchise, but in the end, it's kind of a romantic idea, but maybe doesn't always work out in execution. Sometimes the releases take so long in between that you've forgotten the main story elements by the time the next episode comes out. Episodic gaming isn't really anything new, but it has been a growing trend over the last 15 years, and I think we'll continue to see it grow and grow, especially these interactive comic book, make-your-own-choice style kind of games. It allows developers to get something out, gauge interest, see just how much resources should be put into the next part, although of course that is risky. And we're even seeing it adapted into games with actual in-depth gameplay like Deltarune, where it come out in multiple parts. Much like Star Wars seemingly favoring the series more than the movie, it allows people on a busy schedule, which a lot of us have nowadays, to set a small time away each day to just enjoy something for a little bit. And if you wait long enough, you can still binge it all in one go if that's what you want. However, I also understand that in a world of constant spoiler dodging, it is a lot harder to do that. I want to take you back to early 2016. I was all hyped up after finishing Life is Strange. The Walking Dead game, Season 2 had already wrapped, and we were eagerly awaiting Season 3, or if it was even going to happen. And I was hopeful to find something new to keep me in the trend and just torture myself with new cliffhangers. And then I watched a video by Total Biscuit about a dark, gritty detective-style game called Blues and Bullets.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Total Biscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Blues and Bullets?
Blues and Bullets is a story involving real people in an alternate universe where you play as Eliot Ness, a prohibition agent who, in reality, had a huge part in taking down Al Capone. And Al Capone is in this game. If you watched my Murdered Soul Suspect video, which I doubt you have because most people didn't, but you should because it's my favorite video I've ever made still to this day, then you know I've always wanted a good detective game ever since LA Noir. Something filled with action and mystery and plot twists and larger-than-life characters. And while I didn't have insanely high hopes that this game would be the thing to scratch that itch, it was something that fulfilled both that desire and my desire to be cliffhangered because I hate myself. What I discovered is what I firmly believe to be one of the greatest cliffhangers and mysteries in episodic gaming ever. If you've heard about this game before, then there's a good chance you know exactly where this video is going, but if you have not, then strap yourselves in and get ready for a journey into Blues and Bullets. A warning before we begin. Some of the gameplay that we're about to see and some of the story we're about to hear and analyze is extremely graphic and dark in nature and also has violence involving children in it, so I'm giving you a huge warning right now that if that is something that you are not comfortable with, there is no shame in not watching this video. I am going to be censoring a lot of the more violent things, a lot of the gore. There's a few slurs here and there because I don't want to get demonetized. Sometimes YouTube is very inconsistent with what they demonetize and what's not, and I've seen more and more games getting dinged by the system, so I'm just playing it safe. And also I want to make this video accessible for people who maybe want to enjoy the mystery and not get into that kind of stuff. So if you want to satisfy your own curiosity, you're more than welcome to, but for here, we're going to be dialing things down just a little bit so you don't have to worry about that. A little history lesson here before we get started, because the game assumes that we know some things that you might not actually know. This is extremely oversimplified, but this is all you need to get a baseline for the game. This game takes place during and shortly after the United States Prohibition era. From 1920 to 1933, the United States added the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, which was to ban the manufacture, sale, or transportation of alcohol. The land of the free quickly became the land of the sober. Well, not really, and during that time things went terribly wrong, including people accidentally poisoning themselves by trying to make their own, or in some cases the government poisoning people who were trying to make their own. During this time, a lot of underworld figures came to rise, and one of them was Al Capone, a New York-born, Chicago-based mobster who was also known by the name of Scarface. Al Capone is a greatly infamous character in American history who is mostly remembered for being behind the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, in which several opposing gang members were lined up against a wall and unceremoniously murdered in broad daylight. While Al Capone never served jail time for his role in the deaths of many, he did eventually go to jail after being caught on tax evasion charges, and he was jailed in 1931. 2 years later, the United States added the 21st Amendment to the Constitution, ending Prohibition. There's a little bit more history you'll need to know, but we'll cover that as we get there. We start off entering a cave that looks like something from the Dark Brotherhood quest in Skyrim. And you'll notice right away, everything is grayscale, except for the color red, including lots and lots of blood. We also see a girl who, I don't think this was intentional, but she kind of reminds me of the girl in red from Schindler's List. Maybe just because of the color scheme, but if anything, she's probably a reference to the Wizard of Oz because her shoes are red. We start off playing as the girl and we grab a tool used for lock picking from our cell neighbor and begin picking our lock, while the other kid begs us to hurry to try and free him. We have a choice of how we answer, and these choices don't really matter, at least we don't know what the payoff is yet. They're more for the emotion of the scene than anything.
I can do this. What if you can't? I'll be punished. Just like Juliet. You see? One down. That just leaves yours and the one on the door. I'll be punished. I've been bad. I'll be punished. It's okay. Be quiet.
And I know people have criticisms of these games and these kind of RPGs where they feel like no matter what you say, the conversation ends up the same, but I actually do like stuff like this. It lets you set the tone on how you'd like characters to react or how you want the scene to feel. But there are major decisions to come in this game. These smaller ones are just more for the flavor of the scene. So if you see multiple options on the screen but I don't mention them in my script, the reason is because it doesn't make a difference. Around the area, we see bones, blood, and crying children in other cells. The kids are planning an escape but are obviously scared. And when they hear someone coming, you are given the choice to either try to open the other kid's cell or hide. Either way, the girl ends up hiding, and in walks a tall figure with long robes and a deer skull for a mask.
She's there. She's been really bad, hasn't she?
The figure makes its way over to the cabinet, opens the door, and we cut to the title sequence.
Lose.
Bullets. Alright, I get it. I know what they were trying to do. I get it. We get some scenes of city life, missing children's ads on the side of a milk carton, a cop walking across the street, and a shot of the Blues and Bullets 24-hour American diner. This is our protagonist, Eliot Ness, being handed his pension check. Eliot, a now retired cop, runs the Blues and Bullets diner.
Well, I just slipped out for a second. This arrived for you at the station.
Thanks. I'll put it in the back room, then I'll get you a slice of pie. Deal?
I'm kind of in a hurry. What kind?
Blueberry.
It's a deal.
Eliot's back room is way too fancy and way too empty for this kind of establishment, but I won't lie, this is such a cool, cozy setup. On his wall, we see a few notable things, mostly that he was a big figure in putting Al Capone in jail for tax evasion, that an agent by the name of Jim Dockers was killed by the Mafia, and that Ness retired while working a case looking for some missing children that he could never solve. This is where we have to talk about how the game deals with things that happened historically. Eliot Ness was a real person, and was indeed a Prohibition agent who led a group known as the Untouchables against Al Capone. There's a movie called The Untouchables where he's played by Kevin Costner. Perhaps you've seen it. At the beginning of the game, there's a pop-up that says, "We have tried to tell a story with the utmost respect for the players and to honor all the historical characters and locations we were able to use." Whether this means they obtained permission to use his name or not, or perhaps they were just simply allowed to because the real Eliot Ness died in 1957 and was a public figure, I can't say for sure. I don't know the legalities of this. But it's safe to say that a majority of Eliot Ness's life as portrayed in this game is fictional. They take liberties with the story, which of course you'd expect they would have to some degree. Agent Jim Dockers in the newspaper article doesn't seem to be a real person as far as I can see. I haven't been able to find any information on if Eliot Ness was ever involved in a missing persons case, and as far as I can tell, he never worked at a restaurant, although Wikipedia does note that he was very poor financially near the end of his life, which Ness here seems like he's doing pretty well for himself by owning a diner while collecting retirement checks. Now, I know I'm being pedantic, the game isn't promising to be this historically accurate story, and there's obviously going to be inconsistencies, but because the game has so much history that it relies on, I'll do my best to point out what's real and what's not. Another officer is in the diner waiting for food and harassing us, and we have a choice of how we respond: sarcasm, patience, or threat. Regardless of what you say, he just kinda waves you off, although the sarcastic option is great.
I guess so. The girls at Happy Doll say you're more of the speedy type. I won't keep you waiting again.
The cop asks us not to add chili sauce, so naturally we bathe the burger in sauce. He's also telling a story about coercing someone to falsely confess to a crime with violence, so they're really trying to hammer down that he is this asshole crooked cop. After serving them with their food, Ness spots a customer walking in and goes over to talk. The customer is holding a knife and Ness notices this immediately.
I like this job, you know? Not because I like serving coffee or food. This job is about understanding people, knowing what they want, what they need. You just have to keep your eyes open. The clothes, the haircut, a little movement, a hand clutching a knife. Don't even think about it. Not because of me. At most, I'd knock out a couple of your teeth before disarming you. The guys you should be worried about are the cops at the other table. They'd keep kicking you in the ribs long after you passed out. You'd be lucky to wake up in a hospital. The question is, what do I do with you now?
The game wants to give you a chance to show that you're the exact opposite of those cops. So you either show him mercy by giving him money, and you tell him to start a new life away from crime, or simply tell him you don't want the trouble, so beat it. This is the first time that the game really hammers home you have made a decision. The equivalent to a character will remember that. Another man walks into the restaurant asking for some pie, and it's an engaging conversation.
If I don't get some blackberry pie this minute, I'm gonna die before this day is out. Can you help me, sir?
I'm afraid not.
It's too bad. I need something sweet for my last day on Earth.
Blueberry pie? Last slice.
You use almond extract?
Quarter of a teaspoon.
Which brand?
I make my own. Do I know you from someplace?
Me? No. But you do know my boss.
When Ness questions if he knows the man, he says, "You do know my boss," and we are put in a flashback from 20 years ago.
Garrison, O'Reilly, DiPietro, Dockers.
It is a cold winter night, and Eliot Ness, completely drunk and discombobulated, repeats the name of 4 men: Garrison, O'Reilly, DiPietro, and Dockers. The task? Go see Al Capone. As for the names, there are 10 primary members of the Untouchables, none of them sharing any of the names here. Al Capone's house is huge and very noticeable, and it even has a man standing outside almost in the middle of this intersection keeping watch.
Tell Capone that Eliot Ness is here. We're going to finish this thing once and for all.
Jeez, I don't get paid enough. Listen, you got it backwards. I'm not here to make my boss come out. I'm here to stop you getting in.
I hope you asked Santa Claus for crutches, because if you don't do what I say, they're going to be the perfect gift for you.
Maybe I could borrow a pair from your buddy, Dockers. I hear he's never gonna need them again.
You shouldn't have brought that up.
Oh no? You gonna cry now? Hey, come on. It's Christmas.
After these heated words, Eliot begins his assault. He even says, "Put down your weapon, you'll get a fair trial," which I don't quite understand considering he hit the guy first, unless the point is that he's a wanted criminal and everyone that Al Capone hangs out with is a wanted criminal, in which case Al Capone hasn't exactly been living subtly. Regardless, just a dozen yards away from the main street, Eliot Ness begins a firefight in which he kills dozens of Al Capone's men in his drunken fury. The gameplay doesn't feel too bad here. You don't have free reign or anything, you just choose when to be in cover and when not to be, and sometimes you get to choose which cover you're in. The red of the crosshair with the bullets and red highlighted enemies really stand out. I love the look of the white blinding lights and dark shadows. The contrast here is really eye-catching. I don't know if this style has been done in a game before, but I can see why they went with this, and I'm sure we'll see it again at some point in the future if we haven't already. There's also some quick time events, and losing them just means restarting that immediate section over again where the quick time event started. So there's no real huge, long, repeating sections or repercussions for losing, but it's really not that kind of game. After slaughtering what feels like 50 men, of which Ness technically started, he enters the Capone mansion.
Have any last words?
You come into my house?
Your doorman was kind enough to let me in.
You kill my men.
I didn't know human beings mattered to you.
Would you kill an unarmed man? You? Eliot Ness?
That Eliot Ness is dead. You killed him yourself.
Papa!
Vittorio. Are you gonna kill me in front of my son? That stain right there is all that's left of D'Annunzio, one of my best men. I told him to take care of the butcher on East Main, one of the jerks who've been screwing with me for months. We had to make an example of him. Send a message to the other storekeepers. D'Annunzio ripped out his guts and hung him up with the merchandise, but he did it while the butcher's daughter was watching. Fucking D'Annunzio. There are lines that cannot be crossed. We have to protect the innocence of children. Keep them far, far away from certain experiences.
Your son should know what kind of monster his father is. I can't think of a better life lesson.
Look, Vittorio. His hand's shaking. Booze turns men into cowards. You'll be like your father. Never drink. It's funny, huh? The White Knight of the Volstead Act gets liquored up to kill the king of bootleg booze.
Relax, son. Nobody's going to kill anybody. I'd love to introduce you to a girl your age, Vittorio. Her name is Claire Dockers, and she sings like an angel. You two would get along. 2 days ago, Claire's father caught up with yours in a warehouse. Your father was hitting innocent people, and that's not right. He told him to stop, but your father ignored him and pulled out a gun to shoot him. Claire's father was quicker. He drew his gun first and fired, but the bullet jammed. Your father killed Claire's father, in cold blood. He kicked him in the face so many times not even Claire herself would have recognized him.
You'll never prove I killed Dockers.
I know, and that's why I'm here. But now I know I'm better than you. Your father is a murderer, and Claire hasn't stopped crying these last 2 days, all because of him. Never forget that, Vittorio.
Hold it! Let him go. Run, Ness, and forget I exist, or I'll have to report what you just did. And I do have witnesses. You hear me, Ness?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Inside, we find Al Capone himself, playing a piano, seemingly more annoyed than fearful of his life, and confident that Ness will not kill him because he's unarmed and his son Vittorio is in the room. Vittorio, as far as we are aware, is not anyone who actually existed, and also has a stronger accent than his father. Any other name mentioned outside of Capone and Eliot Ness seems to not be a real person. So from this point on, if you hear any name that isn't those two, know they are completely fictitious. Capone tells a story about how he had to kill D'Annunzio, one of his best men, after he was sent to kill a butcher. However, D'Annunzio did it with the butcher's daughter watching, and that was too far for Capone, believing that the children need to be protected. Al Capone is a greatly fictionalized character in modern storytelling, and it's hard to know exactly how many deaths he was linked to, but needless to say, this game definitely wants you to believe his crime boss reputation, but also tries to make him seem like he has a code of honor, which I couldn't tell you if he actually had one or not. The choices here are ironic, which is sarcasm or a cool one-liner, versus revenge, which is the more aggressive approach. They're also on a timer, but failure to pick one just automatically picks the calmer of the two, so not revenge. The only choice that the game tells you matters is where you have to decide how you respond when Capone says you won't shoot him in front of his son. You'll either put down the gun and say no one is going to get shot, or you'll shoot the piano a few times and go into the same spiel. I'm not gonna lie, I kinda like the placement of this because it happens as other conversation choices are being said. It kinda gives this vibe of you can say anything you want sometimes and it doesn't matter, but sometimes you say one thing or another and people remember that. I almost wish it didn't tell me which decisions were the most important so you could be surprised if Capone maybe mentions later you shot up his piano or something. But this game came out in 2015 when this genre was still finding its feet in modern gaming, so maybe we'll see something like this, or maybe we've already seen something like this and I'm just not familiar with it in the future. Regardless of your choice, Ness responds by telling Vittorio of Claire Dockers, the daughter of Jim Dockers, the agent we saw dead earlier in the newspaper. I always thought Alice at the beginning was Claire for some reason, mostly because Ness has a dialogue where he mentions her dad would be proud of her, so perhaps Alice is the daughter of one of the other cops and we just don't get to meet Claire? Ness throws the bullet that jammed the gun down on the ground as two more of Capone's men rush in just a little bit too late. Despite killing dozens of his men, Capone lets him go, but not without leaving a few more veiled threats. Ness just ended several family lines. I think it's safe to say Capone could probably get away with reporting him anyways. Why he doesn't, I am not really sure. Back to the present, the man who walked into the diner asks Ness to join him in his car. Ness tells the cops that he's closing up, to which Dickinson says, "You're early," despite the fact that the diner says 24/7 on the sign out front, meaning it wouldn't be early because it should never close, but also we don't know if anyone else works with Ness or takes over the night shift. I have no idea. We also have a quick chance to look at a newspaper where we can see that the date is June 7th, 1955. This is really important. Remember this date. We also quickly see a story of convicted felon Osmond Burke, again not a real person, who did crimes that I will not say out loud for demonetization purposes, who recently escaped from prison and killed his entire family in revenge. We get in the car with the man and drive into the night and eventually come across a giant hotel. Inside, there is a large masquerade ball being held, so people are wearing masks, and the red really pops amongst the black and white here. It reminds me a lot of Rapture, specifically the Under the Sea DLC when Rapture is still civilized. Here we get a chance to look around, although there isn't really a lot to look at. The game doesn't have idle conversations with strangers, so you're kind of boxed into where it wants you to go. There is one prompt where you can stare at the backs of the girls of the front for some reason. I don't know if the tattoos would be that common in 1955, so maybe that's a sign that things are weird and different, but if that's not a sign, this next part certainly is.
The Hindenburg. Her forced landing in New Jersey almost cost the lives of over 100 passengers. Yeah. Nearly a fireball in midair. It would have burned down half the city.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Hindenburg disaster, it was an airship that burst into flames in 1937 with almost 100 passengers aboard, and a total of 36 people died because of it. It's really hard to even comprehend people surviving this accident at all when you see pictures of it. Ness's bit here says the Hindenburg was forced to land, which in reality would be a very nice and gentle way of putting it. It really implies that perhaps we're in a reality where the Hindenburg did not burst into flames and didn't kill anyone. We also find a poster by someone named A. Ryan, who owns this hotel, which may or may not be a subtle or not so subtle nod to Andrew Ryan of BioShock fame. Which makes sense given the comparison I'm sure a lot of people have already made. This looks like Rapture. He also mentions that the Hindenburg has been turned into an aeronautical luxury, so it's very much still in one piece. We begin our ascent in a cable car going far, far up into the clouds. The world seems like a mix of BioShock with some of its design, and Fallout with its futuristic setting but with an old school atmosphere. It seems as though Eliot Ness is not super familiar with a lot of the technology or even the hotel as it is, but it also seems like it's reserved for the elite and wealthy of society, which him being a cop is probably not that.
I'm afraid I can't come with you. Thanks for the pie.
But
Welcome to the Grand Hindenburg Hotel. My name is Susan, and I'm glad to be of service. Your name, please?
Ness. Eliot Ness.
Thank you, Mr. Ness. Nice choice. Sounds genuine. And now, how can I help you?
I'm here to see Mr. Capone.
There's no Mr. Capone here, Mr. Ness.
Listen, Susan. I know more than 60 aliases for Al Capone, so you have two options. One is to delay my appointment with him until I guess the right one, which he is not going to like. The other is to send me through and earn my eternal gratitude and his. Your call.
He's in the presidential suite. Top floor at the end of the red carpet.
Thank you, Susan.
Have a pleasant stay at the Grand Hindenburg Hotel, Mr. Ness.
We get a chance to walk around a little bit at a slower pace here, observing just how high up above the city we are. The overall look and feel of the hotel is great, and you get the sense that they're trying to copy some, and I apologize to my fellow Asian people for the use of this word, Oriental style. That's kind of the best way to put it. This is the 50s, so everything Asian at this point was seen as mystical and foreign and exotic, so to design a hotel with these features in mind, it makes guests feel like they're transported into a completely new world, so unlike theirs, which obviously isn't that true, but it is the 50s, and later on we'll actually see a Japanese style garden, which kind of just furthers this point. There seems to be a large fireworks display, for what reason I'm not sure. I don't know if there's a holiday on June 7th or if it's just a thing they do at the hotel. We see shots of couples, signs of honeymoons. We also see this picture of the Hindenburg on fire with the quote, "And so one day my magnificent flying wonder will purify this pagan city with the eternal fire." Credited to A. Ryan, although it sounds more like Comstock, am I right? It seems that while this Hindenburg still caught on fire, enough of it survived for it to still be standing here today. We enter the large Japanese-style garden, and we see an old man mopping up what seems to be a very large pool of blood.
What happened here?
Nothing to worry about, my good man. What happens on the Hindenburg stays on the Hindenburg.
How can you work in a place like this?
You don't want to know where I worked before this, my good man.
Are you saying the law doesn't apply here?
We're too high up, my good man. The law has always preferred to look down.
You never had problems with the police?
Oh, many a one, my good man. In fact, what I'm cleaning up is today's first problem.
The quote, "The law always prefers to look down," is actually an incredible quote for this situation, and I wish I was in more scenarios where I was several hundred feet above a city talking about crime so I could say that. The game is also making some pretty noticeable statements on race. The fact that the working men are black, the ladies at the desk have Asian style tattoos. We get into some Russian stuff later on. It's the 50s, and to pretend like a lot of this stuff wasn't noticeable would make it more noticeable. So it's nice that they at least included this stuff. It's not the main focus, but it's there. The game adds as much red as they possibly can, and it's great that they do that because all of these shots look good and it actually makes sense to give it more of a regal feeling.
Bravo.
This scene is so out of place and yet so funny at the same time. There's absolutely nothing Ness has done up to this point that would make you think he would do something like this, but he really just went ahead and did it anyways. And everyone just claps. Like, is she dead? I don't know what happened. I want to know what happened. I can't see. We finally arrive to the presidential suite and find Al Capone sitting at his piano once again. A little worse for wear, seemingly going blind in one eye.
You should be rotting in jail.
That's exactly what I've been doing for the last 19 and a half years. You'll be surprised what a little good behavior can do for a person. Yeah, not gonna ask me for my last words this time. I'm a lot closer to death than when I last saw you.
The reason I pointed out earlier that the newspaper said 1955 is because the real Al Capone died in 1947. So while this game has Capone going in jail in 1935 and coming out in 1955, the real Capone went to jail in 1932 and was let out because of his illnesses in 1939 and died in January of 1947. In this alternate reality as well, the Hindenburg never crashed, and introducing the world in this way is fantastic because now you have players wanting to see if they can spot differences between our reality and this alternate one that we've now found ourselves in. Ness is not new to this world, but he's new enough to this lifestyle that there's a lot for both of us to discover together. In this game, Capone implies that he got out for good behavior. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about plot holes, because we're here to analyze the game. As much as I do like this game, and I don't think the plot holes matter, we're here to analyze, let's analyze. Al Capone gets arrested and gets out on good behavior after 19 years. The real Al Capone was sentenced to 11 years in jail for tax evasion and got out after 7, citing good behavior and health issues. This Al Capone seems to have been in jail for closer to 20 years. For what? I don't know. Presumably not murder, because if it was for the murder of Ness's 4 friends, he surely would have gotten the death penalty, and by 1955 only 12 states had stopped executing people. If it was for something like drugs or prohibition or tax evasion, then 20 years is a lot of time, and why did Al Capone not use the leverage of Ness becoming an angry serial killer and killing half of his crew like he threatened to just 20 minutes earlier in the game? Al Capone says, "Forget I exist or I'll report what you just did," and obviously that didn't happen because Ness still arrested him. According to the papers at the beginning, Capone was arrested for tax evasion. So the timeline becomes even more confusing because he got a more severe sentence in-game than he did in real life. And before you say the implication could be that he was actually out for 9 years and Ness didn't know about it, his opening line is, "That's what I've been doing for the last 19 and a half years. And he got out on good behavior, so he was sentenced to more than 19 and a half years. I want to make something very clear. I am not in the slightest bothered by this stuff. It's not really the focus of the game, and unless you're actually thinking about it and comparing this to the real world, you won't notice, and it does not matter. But because I'm trying to make the definitive Blues and Bullets video, I figure let's just cover all the bases, talk about all of it.
Look, I didn't ask you here to find out who's got the snappiest comebacks. I want to hire you.
What?
I require your services as a detective.
What's your game? Who do you take me for?
Look, Ness. My granddaughter Sophia has been kidnapped. When what happened to my son, Vittorio, I put her in a boarding school. She was entered under a false surname, Colombo. Nobody knows who she is.
Nobody?
Only Milton, the man who brought you here. I trust him completely. 2 days ago, a guy turned up at the boarding school. He introduced himself as Guido Colombo, the girl's uncle, and her new legal guardian.
I'm sorry, Guido Colombo? Now, I'll be the first to admit, I'm part Italian. I know I said I was Asian earlier, and as unlikely as it is, I actually am both. But seeing as I am both, this isn't really a conversation I've had, but I know some people deem Guido as like an offensive slur towards Italian Americans. I'm just not informed enough to comment on this. I look more Asian than Italian, so it doesn't really come up that I'm Italian. In fact, it doesn't really come up that I'm Asian either, because I don't look that Asian. And I'll ask the comment section to stay away from this because I don't want a big war about slurs and stuff in here. It's not really the point. And in their defense, Guido was a real name at some point, but it's, yeah, okay, I've addressed it. Let's move on. Anyways, this guy came to school, forged documents, convinced the school he was now Sophia's legal guardian, being a distant uncle after a car crash that killed her parents. It seems Vittorio is actually dead as well, although I would think the school would probably know that Vittorio is dead, unless Sophia has like fake parents who have been fake dropping her off to school for the whole illusion of it so that the school didn't suspect that she was Sophia Capone. But we're getting into a whole other complicated thing here, and there's no answer, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that. Capone believes the person is from within his organization, and so he needs someone on the outside. He says he respects Ness after everything they've been through. Man, I love it when an enemies to lovers story comes together.
The kidnapper was hired by one of my men. One of the people I trust.
So why me?
20 years ago, I pushed you to the edge. I bought your friends and killed the ones who couldn't be bought. I got you so obsessed with me that your wife ended up leaving you. When you had nothing left, you walked into my house, shot my bodyguards, and pointed a gun at me. You could have killed me. But you chose to take it out on this piano. You're the only honest man I know.
I'll do it. Not for you. For her.
I knew I got the right guy.
But I want something in return.
As you can see, I'm not short of money. Ask. I won't haggle.
Ness can ask for multiple things in return, whether it be jail, or exile for Al Capone, or a large donation to the Hospice of Santa Esperanza. Side note, Santa Esperanza is not a real place, as I'm sure you guessed, and the only thing I could find with that name is a Georgian 2004 novel that apparently is so confusing there is almost no way to actually explain it to someone. However, there are many places in New York with Esperanza in their name, so perhaps one of those is the inspiration. Regardless of what you pick, Capone will agree, and Ness will know to start with a man named Carlo Boccherini, a forger for the Mafia, who hated Capone for killing his parents. So I'm not sure how that relationship worked. Capone insists that we travel with Milton, the man we met at the diner earlier, who Ness says he recognizes from somewhere, and we're on our way. Warning for the photosensitive coming up for this next section here. This next bit gets a little bit flashy, but it's also really cool.
You're not gonna ask me for my last words?
You should be running. I'm never going to help you. Why me?
I'm not asking you to help me.
I'm not a cowboy. I'll do it. Not for you. For her. This town has become a jungle. Where not even the rats are safe. Those who scraps of dignity we have left. And those who should judge them prefer to squabble over their prey. But it wasn't always like this. The Santa Esperanza I was born in was a clean town. A place where it meant something to be a cop.
We enter this really amazing cinematic scene where we walk forward towards the moon and hear Eliot narrating, old detective style. Words, he says, pops up, and suddenly they become cover as white figures begin to shoot at us as we make our way through this section.
He took everything I had, but in the end I sent him to hell. Rebuilt my life, got my feet back on the ground. But now he's back, and he's dragged me in.
This section is downright incredible. I love this stuff. It's not meant to be real or something actually happening or challenging, but it just looks amazing. It's something I don't think I've ever actually seen in a game before. It plays off this idea with the old school cop and the low, deep narration. It allows the voice actor to get to say these really cool but kind of cheesy lines in a gravelly voice. You get some cool gameplay, so it's not just walking forward. It's all happening in Ness's head, but it's a really cool way to show you where he's at mentally and what he's thinking, rather than awkwardly have him do some exposition or sit and do nothing while he's thinking about it. I love moments like these, and I think this is one of the coolest standout moments of this entire game. Ness says that he needs some help, and we have to choose between sobriety or getting a little drunk. This is an ongoing theme. There's a couple of decisions, and if you stay sober, then you're pretty much sober for the whole game. But if you choose drunk even once, then there's a couple of scenes where they'll recognize that, oh, you've taken a drink at least recently. Again, nothing that really majorly affects the game, but it's so cool that they have these decisions in there just to let you set the tone and emotion, and I'm a big fan of that kind of thing.
Ness.
Eliot, I found Carlo Boccarini.
I knew you would, Alice.
Write this down. 31 Wicker Avenue in Lakeview.
Thanks. Nice work.
Eliot, what do you want with him? He's got a hell of a file.
I think he's mixed up in a kidnapping, but my client doesn't want the police involved.
What are you getting yourself into? Who's your client?
Alice, I don't have much time. I'll let you know how it goes. Thanks. Tomorrow's going to be a long, long day.
The next day, we arrive along with Milton at the Boccarini house.
31 Wicker Avenue. This is it.
You sure?
I'm sure.
At last. That stench of stale grease about you reminds me too much of my old job.
I smell of grease?
I don't think anyone else would notice. But when you spend a part of your sentence as a chef in the kitchens on Gore Island, you smell it a mile away. And how do you think I met Alphonse? Playing golf?
Alphonse?
On the subject of cooking, I know your blueberry pie had an extra something. I still don't know what.
Alphonse?
So what now? You got a plan?
Take a look around, in case there's a rear exit. I'll take the main door.
My pleasure.
Someone took out sections of the fence. Odd.
The house windows are boarded up, and upon trying the doorbell, nothing works. And upon knocking on the door, no one answers. We peek through the window, and... Alright, now you can probably guess what's happened. Boccarini is no longer in the land of the living, and let's just say he left in a very enthusiastic way. I'm going to blur the gore, just because, like I said before, YouTube's policies around demonetization are very inconsistent, and I have seen games get dinged before, and I would rather just play it safe because I don't make a lot of money, and I'd like to make a little bit of money. but I will not be blurring the scenes that just have blood in them. So you won't see any body parts, but you will see a lot of red streaks. So if that bothers you, you can skip ahead. If it doesn't bother you, then you're fine. If it bothers you part way, it's all ketchup. For now, we enter the Boccherini household to see a man killed in a way that I can only describe as ritualistic. Milton leaves us and we get a new gameplay mechanic. We as Ness get to solve the crime. We have to walk around the house, find some clues, and piece together what happened. It's very reminiscent of Murdered Soul Suspect, which again, I'm going to plug it for a second time. If you haven't watched that video, you should go do that. Either way, this gameplay loop mostly consists of us just finding evidence and piecing it together to which pieces are relevant to which parts of the case. You can't fail or anything like that, but it can still feel kind of good to get it right on the first try. For the most part, your prerequisite for advancing is just collecting all the evidence. I already did the first warning with the gore and stuff. I'm going to give you another warning. There is graphic forensic descriptions coming up. The first pieces of evidence are on the body. His eyes have been removed, his tongue pulled out, his hands were, quote, ripped off. He has the bottom of a drinking glass impaled in his side, along with many pieces of what were his front fence posts. We place the appropriate missing limbs under mutilation, and we decide to go look for his eyes. This kitchen and living room area has been completely destroyed. Everything is broken and covered in blood. The table is broken in half and there's a large circle dent in it, fingernail marks that look more like claws, and yeah, a lot of blood. We can also find a watch on the ground, which hasn't been unfastened and has blood on the back. We find some alcohol and can even take a swig if we desire to do so. As you can see, the clues aren't exactly hard to find. The red marker makes everything pretty easy. It's just a matter of walking around and getting a little bit of a story beat as to what Eliot thinks the evidence could possibly mean.
What is it with Italians and olives? They lap those things up like caviar.
Alright, Ness, chill, man. Jeez, okay? What? Wow, damn, man. We find a knife missing from the collection in the kitchen and a door that leads to another room in the house, but it's locked. If you get a clue wrong, the picture just shakes, so you can go through all your evidence, and if you don't have it, then that just means you haven't found the right evidence yet and you need to walk around a little bit more. So we determined that Boccherini was killed in the living room and then dragged into the doorway where his remains still remain. We also look around the other way and there's blood everywhere. We next check out the garage, which has a car which Ness believes to be too fancy to be Boccherini's, which is a little bit judgmental. We find a cigarette case with the initials OB and plates from Vermont. I don't know where we are. I assume we're in New York, but with Santa Esperanza not being a real place, it's kinda tricky to pinpoint exactly where we are. New York feels safe, but it's never explicitly said. The bathroom is also completely destroyed and covered in blood, and lying in the sink are Boccherini's hands, closed together and impaled on 2 spikes. As we open the fingers on the inside, we see multiple teeth stabbed into each hand, and on the wall, a symbol painted in blood. We determine the spoon we found was used to remove his eyes, and come to the conclusion that this seems to be some sort of ritualistic killing. We also determine the car isn't his and most likely belongs to the guest that he was eating lasagna with. We also figure out that it's quite possible that in the locked room that we have yet to get access to, the other guests could still very well be in the house.
Mr. Ness, can you open the door for me?
Milton rings the doorbell because of course he can't just say anything and jump scares the hell out of Ness for no reason.
It was open. Why did you ring?
I thought I should use the doorbell so I wouldn't startle you.
When I came in, I pressed the doorbell and it didn't work.
Well, in light of the facts, I deduced that it was your finger that wasn't working. So, what can you tell me to restore my faith in you as a detective?
What is that?
Not a good start. It's a camera so Alphonse can see all this.
Cameras were not that big in the 50s. Also, Ness has had multiple pictures in the newspaper. He would absolutely know what a camera is. I hate myself for doing that, and my impression's not that good.
Boccherini had company for dinner. Someone from Vermont with the initials OB. Someone whose social status was a lot higher, but who was on the same side of the law. He served lasagna, and after clearing away the dishes, they opened a bottle of whiskey in the dining room. That was when the murderer burst in on them, coming through the window which he broke with his own body weight. Boccherini, or maybe his guest, pulled a gun, but it was a waste of time. The murderer was so fast he was disarmed before he could fire. He focused his attention on Boccherini, totally ignoring the guest, and lifted him up into the air. He then threw him against the dining room table so hard that one of the glasses of whiskey was embedded in Boccherini's back. He span around, clawing at the table, and immediately afterwards the murderer ripped off his hands. I have no idea how he did it, but all the evidence suggests he just pulled. Blood sprayed everywhere. The wristwatch fell to the ground. He dragged him through the corridor into the hall. He tore down the lamp, hung him from the brackets, and stabbed steel rods through his body. He skewered him on the iron bars, possibly taken from the fence outside, and pulled out his teeth one by one. Finally, he scooped out his eyes with a teaspoon. Boccherini must have been dead when the murderer went to the bathroom with his hands in his teeth. There, he arranged them to make an altar, weaving the fingers together and placing the teeth inside. Next, he painted something on the wall in blood, a symbol which I don't recognize, but which could have some kind of ritualistic significance. When he'd finished his artwork, he left. I don't know what he did with the eyes.
You're telling me that someone did all this armed with a teaspoon?
More or less.
And you worked all this out on your own, just by looking?
More or less.
I don't know which of the two of you scares me more. Wait a second. What about the guest?
Right. Come with me. Nothing.
Turns out Mr. Untouchable isn't infallible. But you were close. Congratulations.
This must be Boccherini's office. Let's take a quick look around.
All yours.
Milton cannot be bothered to look for clues, so we're left to check out the office on our own. We can talk to him, ask him about the book he's reading, which is a Shakespeare play. We can ask him about his jail time, which he says he accidentally killed someone. And we can ask about the link between Boccherini and Sophia Capone, but that doesn't really lead anywhere because why would he know? A suitcase on the couch contains a large amount of money, to which Ness deduces it's probably the guest's. He also finds a note.
Carlo, I have the goods for OB, but I have to take the children to school tomorrow and I can't make the meetup. Friday, same time, same place. It's signed N.I.
Mm-hmm. These initials are getting to be a pain in the ass, right?
I have to take the kids to school tomorrow. I don't think this is some loving divorced daddy, Milton.
I take back what I just said.
The driver's license of one John Martinson and Osmond Burke. O.B.
Do we know him?
Actually, we know him, Milton, from the newspaper article. Remember? I told you to remember it. Don't tell me you forgot.
The eldest son of the richest family in Vermont, convicted. He was arrested thanks to the testimony of his father, who wound up disinheriting him. He escaped from prison last week. He broke into the family home and slit the throats of all his relatives one by one, opened the safe, and got away with a fortune.
They don't make jails like they used to. All starting to add up, isn't it?
Alright, I'm pausing this clip right now to tell you that there is a jump scare happening. Not only does this get me every time I play, because I've gone through this game like 5 times now for footage, it literally jump scared me while editing. And I was staring at the timeline, so I knew there was a noise coming and I still got scared. It is unbelievably annoying. So there's going to be a loud noise right after I say 1 and I finish my countdown. So are you ready? Prepare yourself. 3, 2, 1.
Out of my way! Out! Out!
Milton! Milton!
You're doing fine on your own, Mr. Ness. I believe in you.
We get caught up in a QuickTime event and Milton refuses to help. He really just wants to sit and watch while this man with a knife attacks us. Ness can hold his own in a fight, but at one point the man loses the knife and Ness literally throws the man in the direction of the knife so he can grab it again. So while he's capable of shooting 50 men in one night, his decision making is less to be desired in a one-on-one fight.
Get out of my way, I said! He's coming back!
Who's coming back?
Him! The monster!
The guy who killed Boccherini?
He was a monster! Oh, get your hands off me, Negro!
What was he like? Describe him for me.
It was a monster. Red and black. I mean, his head reached the ceiling. He tore off his hands with his claws! It was a monster! A monster!
Should I hit him again?
You're Osmond Burke, right?
Yes.
Good. Now pay attention, Burke, because I have a question for you. Who wrote this note?
Nikolai Ivankov.
Rings a bell.
One of Capone's right-hand men 20 years ago. What does this stuff about kids mean?
I don't know.
Calm down, Burke. You were going to meet up with him, right?
Yes, at the docks, berth 42, right next to where the alligator 3 is moored.
So what's the meetup time?
Tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? No, it's going to be tonight.
So this is Osmond Burke. He came to Boccherini to get a new identity and was a witness to his brutal murder by what he calls a monster. Burke was in town to get a new identity and eventually meet with the most Russian-sounding name you've ever heard, Nikolai Ivankov, who was an old partner of Al Capone's. We aren't told what the meeting is about, but we get him to change the meeting time to tonight. We lock Burke in a car, and regardless of where we suggest to take him, Milton says he needs to take him to Al Capone, or Alphonse. We cut back to the Blues and Bullets diner where Ness is tending to his hands when we meet a new character, Delphine. Delphine is the widow of Jim Dockers, Ness's close friend who was killed by Capone.
Eliot?
Ah, Delphine.
Oh, thank God you're here. The lights were off, so I thought that... I'm sorry. I got out of the hospital late, then I went to the station to pick up Jim's check, and when they told me... I'm scared.
Of what?
What are you drinking?
It's only juice. Juice and nothing else.
Breathe on me. You heard me. I'm sorry. It hasn't been a good day.
What's happened?
No! You knew!
Knew about what?
What's that gun doing there?
A guy I know is having trouble with a 2-bit mafioso. He asked me to go with him, just in case. I didn't have to get it out.
Well, don't. Don't start taking on the Mafia. Not now. You really don't know?
No, I don't know. And if you keep up the guessing games, I'll never know.
He's back.
Who?
Him. I don't know why it still surprises me, but it's incredible that you were such a good detective, and yet you've never been able to understand people. Capone got out of jail.
Pretty much no matter what we answer, we are always lying to Delphine. It's just how we lie to her. It's very clear that in the event of Jim's death, Ness and Delphine became quite close, and that Delphine wants to protect Ness, and Ness is more interested in keeping Delphine in the dark so she doesn't worry. She also seems to know that Ness has the tendency to abuse alcohol, and the only way to avoid this scene is if you don't drink.
What are you drinking?
It's only juice. Juice and nothing else.
Breathe on me. You heard me. I'm sorry. It hasn't been a good day.
What's happened? It's only juice. Juice and nothing else.
Breathe on me. You heard me. Don't lie to me, Eliot. Especially not now.
Again, this is the game allowing you to set your own emotional beats, which I think is really cool. There's no incentive to drinking or not, at least nothing clear yet. You literally just don't have to pick it, but it's cool to see how it can change the story.
You're the only part of Jim's life that I have left. If you put yourself in danger, Please, no. But thanks.
My hand? I burnt it cooking. Fried eggs are the devil's work.
What's going on, Eliot? We're closed.
Can you wait outside for a couple of minutes, Milton?
Sure, of course. Although, I'm sorry to say, but we're short on time.
Eliot.
I said a couple of minutes, Milton.
It's all right. Goodbye, Eliot. You can use that couple of minutes to teach this gentleman some manners.
No, and it's none of your business.
Milton pushes the subject on whether Ness is interested in Delphine or not, and you can give a reason or two as to why, although it's very clear that Ness is in fact interested. Ness has now dressed like Osmond Burke to attend the meeting Osmond Burke was going to be attending. The duo head to the piers after a really nice moving shot that lays out the entire area, but again, it's these little bits of flavor when setting up the scenes that just make everything look nice.
Hear that? Not bad.
A white boy who likes the blues. What's next? You gonna let the black man vote?
They start playing into the racism theme a little bit more now that we're well over into the game, and it does pick up from here, so I do apologize if some of the things said do make people a little bit uncomfortable. Like I said though, I am in favor of mentioning it. It's not supposed to be a main theme, but it would be weird if it wasn't involved because it's such a core staple part of what people think when they think of this era in America.
Hey you, where do you think you're going?
Hello, friend. I've come to speak with Nikolai Ivankov. Can you help me?
I'm sorry, pal. The Mummy Repair Center is over on the other side.
Well, we tried being polite.
Kick him in the balls, honey.
It'd be my pleasure, Sweetie Chops.
Sweetie Chops. Great name.
Maybe you can kick me in the balls, but not him. I gelded him myself, like an ox. You can't imagine the kind of strength that gives. He could split your chest with a single headbutt.
And anyone else who gets in your way, Mr. Burke.
Ah, you got one of those uppity Negroes, I see.
If he's like that with me, think what he'd do with you.
What the fuck? Who the hell do you think you are?
I'm Osmond Burke, and I have an appointment with your boss.
You're Burke. Why didn't you say so before? Come on in.
As easy as that, we are at the pier. We come across a shipping container which makes a growling noise before being taken away, which is concerning. As we look around for the ship we're meant to meet Ivankov on, a massive submarine emerges from the water, as our meeting location is revealed. The hatch opens, and destiny awaits. And that is episode 1. We get to see a really cool credit sequence where all the characters are statues and we get to see voice acting credits. I can't really speak enough about how cool these details are, and they really add a lot of flavor to the experience. We get a post-credit scene with the young girl from the prologue, who we can now safely assume to be Sophia Capone, and she is surrounded by cult members.
You know that we punish children who behave badly, don't you? Yesterday, it was Juliet who behaved badly. Do you remember?
Uh-huh.
She hit Junior so she would finish ahead of him in the morning race. Do you know what we did to her? Don't worry. You'll find out soon enough. Which do you prefer? The doll or the plush toy? Two days ago, Mickey bit Tom so he could take his food. Do you know what we did with him?
Bruno says you killed him.
Bruno says many things. Which do you prefer, blonde hair or brown? And today, you tried to escape. Do you know what the difference is?
No.
Juliet and Mickey hurt their friends so that we would not punish them. You tried to escape, but you did not harm your friends. On the contrary, you tried to help Bruno, putting your own life in danger. Very few children would do that. We are going to punish you. But in a different way than Juliet and Mickey. Bruno, on the other hand, did something very similar to them. He betrayed you to avoid being punished.
I'm sorry.
Which of these two drawings do you like best?
I'm sorry.
And that ends the first Blues and Bullets episode. Reviews were mostly positive. People enjoyed what they had experienced. Is it graphically the most impressive thing for its era? No, but I think the color scheme makes up for a lot of that and still makes it look very appealing. The game truly captures this noir film feel, the big red font giving me vibes of Sin City. The subtle piano music playing in the background sets the tone perfectly. The voice of Eliot Ness is this perfect type of low, rumbly voice that you really want to accompany you for this kind of journey. The sequence where Ness is walking through his fears and anxiety in a dreamlike state is some of my favorite parts about this game, and it is such a cool way to keep you engaged, to keep you updated on information, and also just put on a little bit of a show, because why not? In terms of gameplay, is it lacking? Sure, a bit. The shooting isn't anything special. Mind you, a game like Telltale's The Walking Dead also had shooting bits, which also didn't feel that special, and I don't mind comparing this game to that because it's such a similar vibe and format. The detective work is fine, very similar to some other games. It's not really meant to be a challenge, it's just meant to be something to get you from point A to point B, and make you at least do a little bit of work. And I like it because it makes you pay attention while you're learning all of this information. I think it's fine for this kind of game. It's not too hard that it takes you right out, but it's not so easy that you accidentally zone out and lose what's happening. I really like the conversational aspects of this game. Not every choice is going to matter, but I really do appreciate that the game lets you kind of put your own emotions and atmosphere into each conversation, which can in one way or another sometimes have a bearing on the story. Ness can be an absolute asshole. He can be an alcoholic, doing anything he can to fight his demons out of the terrible things he saw in service. Or he can be a guy who loses his cool but gets the job done, the reluctant anti-hero. Or he can be this beacon of light who always does the right things despite everything life has thrown at him. The ultimate good guy, the Atticus Finch. And it's really your call. The game is a burger and you pick the toppings. And yeah, some conversation options are going to mean more than others, but sometimes they just happen in the middle of conversations and you don't even realize you're about to make a major choice, and I like that. The mystery is set. Someone has killed Boccherini, supposedly some sort of creature. You have Al Capone begging for your help, your worst rival begging for your help, but your best friend's widow is telling you to be cautious and you have to lie to her about it. You have children stuck in some sort of cultish cave with no context as to what's going on, and that's truly what you want. You want that atmosphere, you want that 50s vibe, but most of all, you want a story that's going to keep you on your toes in a mystery that needs to be solved. And so far, this game has delivered. It would be 8 long months before the highly anticipated Episode 2 would be released. And now that the game had our attention and built an identity for itself, we need to see how they step it up and keep the mystery alive. Episode 2 starts off with another sweeping shot of what I believe is a different pier, this time in the winter. Even though we've had many shots in daylight already, it's really the first time we've seen something so bright, and as much as I've already complimented the visuals before, the red, black, and white is just my favorite trio color combination, and it looks really good here. In what appears to be a flashback scene, Eliot Ness is going on a date at a Christmas market, and at first we see a fortune teller tent which we enter.
Come inside if you like.
Strange tent for Christmas week.
Tell your fortune, young man.
I don't think it'll be good, but go ahead.
Oh, I see success at work. Very soon. Probably the last in a long time.
That's enough for me. You just made my day.
In that case, I'd better not tell you how the affair with that married woman is going to go.
What? How do you know?
Is better if I don't tell you. And that's all we're going to talk, for now. You may leave now. I feel someone is waiting for you.
So a young Ness is here on a date to see a married woman. Non-shockingly, Ness is not exactly the perfect man, and the game never tries to make it out to be that way. We see a kid playing hopscotch similar to that of Baguette Kid. There's a few places where we can buy things for the lady that we're meeting, and we can talk to this fisherman who just wants to catch a giant sea bass. We also stop to talk to Hank Sorensen, who owns the establishment we're having a date at. We basically mention that we know he has alcohol, but that's not why we're here, so he can rest easy. In the distance, we see none other than Delphine, Jim Docker's wife, Ness's best friend's wife. We hand her the cookie that we bought for her daughter Claire.
Here, for Claire.
Thanks. Should I tell her it's from you?
Nah, that's not necessary.
Shall we walk?
I hope someday we can walk arm in arm.
Jim and the rest of Ness's crew are still alive, and this affair between Ness and Jim's wife has already been going on for quite some time, it seems.
Was it hard to get away?
Not really. I told Martha I had to check out a tip-off. In fact, it's true.
That's exactly what Jim told me. On Strawberry Avenue, right?
I left him in charge. It's a routine check. I'm sure it's nothing. At the most, some kind of abandoned bootleggers still. O'Reilly and DePietro are with him. Even Garrison joined them to stretch his legs and take a break from the leads in the accounting book.
Are you certain there's no danger?
Absolutely. You can always pick up some extra information, maybe a lead or two, but it's the dullest part of our work. Besides, I had to see you. These last months haven't been easy. We barely see each other. We're drifting apart, and I can't allow this to end badly.
How long has it been since you gave me a present? Not for Claire, for me. This isn't right. If we go on, I'm gonna end up hating you. I think I already do, almost as much as I hate myself.
Delphine.
Goddamn fish!
Before, I had you as a way of escaping from Jim. But since you began this crusade against alcohol...
Against Capone.
Damn you to hell, Satan!
Ever since you dragged Jim into these untouchables of yours...
Jim Dockers is the best cop in Santa Esperanza, and the most honest.
You sent him out on a raid so you could see his wife, Eliot. How can you look him in the face after that?
I'll tear out your liver, you unholy abomination.
I know how to keep love and work separate, Delphine.
When I'm with him, he only talks about you, and now you only talk about him?
It was you who...
You screwed everything up. Can't you see that?
I'll rip your scales out one by one with my fucking teeth.
There's nothing I can do. I owe it to the city.
Right. You owe me nothing. Nor do I to you. It's over, Eliot.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna cut you up and just chop you into little...
Will you shut up? We're having a conversation.
No, I'm not gonna shut up until I've landed that son of a bitch.
Do you want a Christmas punch in the square?
Come on.
So Delphine wants to end the affair, and they agree to have some Christmas punch together one last time. Although we can see that with not much time, both are laughing and smiling because there's obviously chemistry and feelings there. They weren't having an affair just for the sake of it. Delphine wants to end the affair mostly because Eliot is just too much into his work, much like Jim, and she wants to be there for Jim because obviously she cares and has feelings for him as well to a degree. You can react in anger, patience, or desire, and the game notes that as a major decision.
What can I get for the happy couple?
2 glasses of Christmas punch, please.
Coming right up. With or without alcohol?
Without, please.
Well, of course. Besides, we don't serve alcohol here. No sirree. At the Tipsy Mermaid, we have the greatest respect for the law.
I think Jim suspects something.
Yeah, when all's said and done, he is a cop.
Eliot, we have to stop seeing each other. It won't be such a big change. Really, I think it's best if we break it off. Jim needs me, your priority is your work, and I don't see any other way.
You're right. It's best if we just break it off, as if we'd never loved each other.
Eliot, don't be like that.
I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I understand. I guess I would do the same. Jim is a good man.
But it's not just because of Jim. Don't forget I have a daughter.
You know, I never forget that.
You're right. I'm sorry. What about your marriage? Why don't you give it a chance?
Martha's parents are coming on Friday
They are.
to take her back to Greenville.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What do I care? Her loss.
I don't know you anymore, Eliot. You really are untouchable. And I am Jim Docker's wife. Besides, if I want to study medicine, I'm gonna need time. I can't steal it from my family.
I know, and I support you, but...
2 glasses of Christmas punch for the happy couple. The fuzz really screwed up this time, huh?
What do you mean?
Can't you hear the sirens? On the radio, they're saying 4 cops got pumped full of lead. Not that I'm glad to hear it, of course.
Where?
On Strawberry Avenue, I think.
No. No, no, no! Jim!
Wait!
What?
We can't show up together. I'll see you later.
Oh my God. Jim!
This is the day that Jim and the others were killed by Capone's men, putting this 2 days before the mansion shooting scene we saw earlier because Eliot Ness mentions 2 days ago.
Looks like someone said something they shouldn't have.
Whiskey. A bottle. Now.
We don't serve alcohol here, sir. At the Tipsy Mermaid, we have the greatest respect for the law.
You took delivery of 12 cases on Wednesday night. Bring me a bottle, or I'll make sure you rot in jail for the rest of your sorry little life.
1 bottle of whiskey coming right up.
Garrison. O'Reilly. DePietro. Dockers.
Back in the present day, we are boarding Ivankov's submarine, a large structure filled with mechanics and workers, and other things I'm sure, but I really just want to keep talking because I like showing off these sweeping establishing shots because I think they're all really cool and well done and pretty unique, but I don't have a lot else to say because I have no idea what inside a submarine looks like. We introduce Milton as our slave, Theseus, and we continue to establish our cover as Osmond Burke. There is a large masked guard who walks beside Ivankov, and there's a lot of guards with guns, which seems a bit off given you'd think everyone on the sub would be an employee or worker of his, but I suppose if you're truly paranoid it never hurts, or it just implies that a lot of people are coming on this submarine to do business, and he likes to be safe. There's a quick discussion about the bodyguard and a confirmation that we did see Boccherini to get our forged IDs. Eventually we sit down and there's a lot of small talk, mostly Ivankov praising us for all the awful things Osmond Burke has done, and a little bit of chastising of Milton for laughing or speaking out of turn when he shouldn't be. Ivankov also says he recognizes Milton from somewhere, leading to 2 people who now recognize Milton. We successfully negotiate the deal, although at this point we have no idea what it is we're actually purchasing. Ivankov drops a few slurs and then tells us the reason he has so much security at the moment is because he's heard that Al Capone is back and out of prison. I love that everyone hypes up how evil and awful Al Capone is. It makes you realize that, while right now we have this nice working relationship with him, this guy was your absolute nemesis, and he deserved to be so. A worker comes up and whispers something in the ears of Ivankov. It turns out a man, quote-unquote, jumped off a building in the city, a man whose face had recently been operated on. It doesn't take too much to guess that after handing Burke to Al Capone killed him. The irony is that Ivankov mentions Boccherini losing his touch in his old age, but Ness, for whatever reason, did not take the papers with him, which seems like it would be the most important thing. I also don't know how Ivankov and his men would know it's the papers meant for Burke, because Burke was using a fake name, unless they also knew his fake name in advance, but they never referenced him as such, and we don't actually know what that fake name was.
So, everything's gonna work out fine, huh? If someone hadn't thrown someone off the side of a Zeppelin.
Well, Alphonse gets these crazy notions.
Alphonse. How about grabbing a gun and helping me?
I don't like shooting. I prefer the human touch.
Why does Capone send me a bodyguard who won't shoot?
I'm not your bodyguard, Ness. I'm here to watch you.
We begin a large shootout section, although Ness takes some time to undisguise himself first.
I want the secret.
Of what?
Of your blueberry pie.
In your dreams.
After what feels like forever, we finally corner Ivankov, and Milton gives him a straight punch to the face. Because Ivankov mentioned a cargo hold earlier when Ness talked about Sophia Capone, Ness wants to investigate before they take off. At this point, we've pretty much killed every single person on the submarine. Milton sits on Ivankov and reads a book while Ness gets to investigating, while also getting mad that Milton has a gun and won't use it.
All yours. I'll stand guard.
Without a gun?
I always carry one.
No.
I prefer not to use it unless I have to.
They could have killed us.
But they didn't. You should be proud of yourself, not mad at me.
You're not going to help me?
No.
No?
I'm not a detective, and there's too much blood in this tragedy to put it down.
You want blood? I promise you, we've got oceans of it right here. And unlike the blood in your Shakespeare, this is real.
Yet another reason.
Why don't you like shooting?
I did it once. I wasn't good at it. Never again.
So here we begin our next investigation. It seems like we're going to have one of these per episode. Much like the one at the Boccherini household, although the space here is quite literally 10 times as big. I'm also going to go ahead and throw out the warning right now. While the visuals aren't so bad here as they were, this gets really dark and pretty disturbing in theme and story and stuff, so this is another content warning now, just in case you've somehow made it this far, but you're still unsure. It gets pretty bad. First, we head up to the office and immediately find a magazine cover of former boxer Sugar Kid Milton, who was sentenced to 7 years in prison. On the desk, we find a receipt for a children's clothing store, lots of empty vodka bottles, a typewriter, and a fake ID for a Guido Colombo. This all but confirms we are in the right place and talking to the right people. These are the people that took Sophia Capone. There's a giant safe in the room that we don't know the code to, and we find a folder with a list of sales, not just of kids, but of mixed genders, ages, and races. There is a serious lack of red in this area. Almost everything is black and white, which gives it this really eerie vibe. On one hand, the clue indicator sticks out way more, but on the other hand, it feels kind of flat, but not in a boring way, more like a, okay, where's the red kind of way. You feel like it's coming eventually.
So you have a sweet tooth?
Yeah.
And that's why they called you the Sugar Kid?
All right. What do you want to know?
How did you survive on Gore Island?
Alphonse. When I arrived, he was still in his prime, and he ruled the roost. He protected me until years later, I had to protect him. You satisfied? Anything else?
I'm sorry about Billy Johnson.
I don't know how it happened. I didn't mean to hit him so hard. Well, I did, but you catch my drift. First of all, I should have been letting him beat me. The fight was fixed. But I wasn't in the mood, and I took it out on poor Billy, a white boy who probably had no idea it was rigged. You satisfied? Anything else?
Why did you shoot those people?
The white guy's friends follow the black guy who accidentally killed him. They're 20 at least. They start insulting him. The black guy takes it. After the insults, the spitting starts. The black guy takes it. The shoving. Black guy takes it. Kick from the back. The black guy takes it. Another and another. Black guy turns and fights back. And the mob, growing by the minute, falls on him. Someone fires a shot in the air. Everyone backs off. That someone is the dead guy's brother. He sticks a gun in the black guy's face, but the black guy's quicker. He grabs the gun, shoots him in the chest. While the crowd runs, the black guy empties the gun, not pausing to take aim. 1 dead, 4 wounded, 13 years. Reduced due to temporary insanity. There you are. Now you know who I am. So, what's the secret ingredient?
The deal was that you would tell me who you are, and I found it out for myself.
Oh. You win, my friend. For now.
Milton gets completely screwed over by Ness in this conversation here, which honestly paints Ness as a huge villain and pretty much irredeemable in my eyes. We find a large and noted to be extremely clean shower room with damp towels and kids' shampoo. We also find a locked shipping container that needs a key, which the camera then very subtly implies it's somewhere in the office, so thanks for that, video game. There's the red I was looking for. Hung up on a fence wall, we see a paper with 2 columns, subjects and weights. It appears this was some sort of fight ring between people being held here, and a whole lot of blood lies in the center of the pit. We find at least 4 sets of bloody bear footprints, dog paw prints, and boot prints in this blood. Up the steps we see a chalkboard with daily rounds and tournament brackets. We also find a pair of boxing gloves, and on them we see a tear as well as blood and brain matter on the end. It's quite possible Ivankov had been practicing his boxing skills down here on unwilling participants. In yet another section of the submarine, we see what looks to be many cages for dogs, chainsaw, a bloody operating table, and cages that more than likely contained humans. Making our way over to the table, we get a better look at the chainsaw, which Ness gives us a little history lesson on, blood which Ness says is less than a day old, blood that has been old and dried for a long time, and chainsaw marks. We then inspect the cages, have some teeth marks on the bars, animal fur, there are bullet casings on the ground. The cages are all numbered like on the chalkboard, and there are urine stains on the ground as well. Over to the cages, we find buckets that were used as toilets, shackles, a plate of food eaten recently, and an X painted in blood. Some of the cages have labels on them. One is the name of a guy who owns the biggest prostitution ring in Santa Esperanza, and the other has the KKK on it. We find a lever that opens up a trap door, and yeah, I'm blurring that. It is filled with body parts, hands, feet, fingers, you name it. Absolutely terrifying. As if being trapped in this massive basement doesn't creep you enough as it is, Milton won't even walk around with you or really have much to talk to you about. I love detective games that give you a companion so you don't always feel alone because I'm a giant scaredy cat. And well, having Milton here is comforting in a way because it's not like I'm alone entirely. I still have to do all the discovering on my own. So we put the pieces together. Ivankov is a human trafficker. Some of his customers either didn't pay or ended up rejecting their orders, and anyone that gets rejected goes into the ring and fights other prisoners or dogs. The losers end up getting cut up and thrown into the trash. I head back up to the office to look for this key and start by opening the safe. This is the only part of the game that kinda sucks. The combination is 209, which is Apollo's number, who won all the fights. I don't know if Apollo is a dog or a person or a nickname or what, but the chances that you memorized that number or made the correlation is kinda slim, because why would the answer be the number that was most likely decided recently, unless that's just a really old tournament, in which case they haven't been holding tournaments. But Ness also said the blood was fresh, so they just very recently reset the safe. The logic there doesn't quite work, but I understand what they were trying to do. But anyways, one bad part in the whole game so far isn't so bad. It's just a little bit frustrating, and you might have to look it up. Inside the safe is the key that we're looking for. So we go down and unlock the storage container and find what seems to be specifically designed to hold children. We find a box of clothing and inside find a shoe that's identical to the one that Capone described buying for Sophia. We also found logs in the office that implies that she was paid for and delivered to her buyer, and other evidence like the kid's shampoo heavily implies she's still very much alive.
We're done here. Let's go.
Already? I thought I'd have time to finish Act 4.
Are you doubting my efficiency as a detective?
That would depend on the quality of your conclusions.
Ivankov is a human trafficker. He has various customers who make specific requests. Slavers, imps, God knows what else. He kidnaps them and puts them in these cages, shackling them and feeding them like animals until he's ready to complete the order. When he has enough, or maybe when the designated day comes around, his customer comes here and decides which of his catches are satisfactory and which are not. What does he do with the rejects? For many people, this would be a problem, but not for Ivankov. Like a true boxing fan, he organizes fights between the failed candidates. Bloody tournaments, possibly to the death. I'm sure his men place bets, and that the whole sick spectacle, like the Roman circus, helps keep morale high. But, as in the circus, it's not just people that fight. There are animals too. In these cages, Ivankov kept dogs. He forces the survivors to fight them, wearing boxing gloves, until the dogs tear them apart. And if anyone survives, Ivankov's own men finish the job. This leads us to the next problem. What does Ivankov do with the bodies? Easy. He cuts them up on this table, one by one, alive even, if they had the bad luck not to die in the arena. And then, I don't know, maybe he throws them overboard, but that's always risky. Maybe if we interrogate him when he wakes up, he can tell us more. But that's not what really interests us. What really interests us is what's inside, or what was inside this container. In recent weeks, Ivankov has kidnapped 9 children for an anonymous client who pays him a fortune for each one of them. The most expensive item of all has been given the initials SC, our Sophia, as proved by one of her shoes, which I found in there. Today, or possibly last night, the customer took delivery of the children and paid in full. Before this, Ivankov bought them new clothes and gave them a shower. Why would he do that? Is it to sell them into adoption in wealthy families? I very much doubt it, but I can't figure out another reason. What I do think is that his client doesn't want to leave loose ends. I think he forced him to get rid of the rest of his prisoners. This is why they organized fights yesterday, dismembered the combatants, and even killed all the dogs.
The game even offers an explanation for why everyone and everything seems to be gone as we've arrived, which I really like. Milton wants to take Ivankov to Al Capone. Ness is opposed, but we lose that argument pretty convincingly.
Not gonna persuade you, am I?
No.
Okay.
Wake up, Eliot.
Are we there?
No, still a ways to go. But from here we have to go on foot.
After we wake up, we're back as young Ness in a car with a man we haven't met before. Another flashback? Perhaps a dream. It's late at night and we're in a storm, and the game tells us that this is in fact Jim Dockers we're walking with.
We've been in the car for 2 hours. You going to tell me why we're here?
Jim seems to be leading us somewhere for some reason, but we have no idea why or where. There's obviously a heavy implication here that Jim knows that we're having an affair with Delphine, or that something is going on, and this is of course before the Winter Harbor scene because that's where he dies. So this is the youngest and further back we've been so far, although we don't know by how much. He constantly mentions that we're friends and that we can trust him, and also tells us many stories about betrayal.
Have you heard of the Voduna cult?
You mean voodoo? Dolls and needles?
Yes and no. It's different varieties of the same thing. The Vodun religion from East Africa. In Cuba, they call it Vodou. In Haiti, it's voodoo. Santa Esperanza had its own version. A little community that lived in these woods, no more than 200 people, I reckon.
Had?
Right. They say practically all of them died. A sort of civil war sparked up by betrayal. Betrayal between friends.
Really? What kind of betrayal?
The Vodunas place particular importance on a person's name. They chose a name for themselves when they reached adulthood, and they only revealed it to their partners and their descendants.
Is that so?
It is. Legend says that while he was out hunting with his right-hand man, the chief of the Vodunas was attacked by...
Not such a dumb idea. I wish no one knew my name.
Well, for the Vodunas, it wasn't that simple. 1, 2, 3... They had different names for day-to-day use. Nicknames similar to Indian names. Anyway, while he was out hunting, the chief of the tribe was attacked by a bear.
Don't tell me you dragged me into a wood full of bears.
I wasn't joking when I told you not to let your guard down.
Shit.
The chief's wounds looked fatal, so he confided in his best friend, the best hunter in the tribe, and whispered his true name to him. The hunter left him in the woods, went back to the village, and told the news to the chieftain's wife and children.
Well, that's tough. However badly wounded he was his partner. You can't leave your partner in the woods, whatever state he's in.
Let's hope neither of us has to make that kind of decision today.
Sullivan River flows into the Donovan Dam, I think.
I didn't think geography was your department.
Sometimes I like to dabble in things that aren't officially my department.
So I see. According to Vaduna law, from the moment the hunter whispered the dead husband's name to the chief's wife, he would take his place.
In what sense?
In the eyes of the tribe, he became him. He had to take on his role, fulfill his duties, raise his children, and sleep with his wife. Damn. Should be right here.
What?
The sign tells us which way we have to go. Must be hidden in the undergrowth.
You look for it. I'll stand guard.
No, I'll stand guard.
It's really quite fascinating seeing Eliot Ness here at such a moral disadvantage. He's practically hanging out with serial criminals this entire game, and even when he does bad things, you can kinda see his reasoning for it. But here Jim Dockers is straight up a good dude, and Ness knows that he's a backstabber. We look around for the sign and find a few other things. Amongst them, we spot a tent and a campfire, which Ness just randomly guesses is a few weeks old, although it's raining, so I don't know how we can tell. We find some bear traps, seemingly abandoned. We also find a severed arm, which Ness is incredibly calm about. The arm hasn't decomposed or anything, it looks very fresh, but he doesn't bother to bring attention to it, he doesn't tell Jim about it. He kind of just is content saying, it's an arm, and leaving.
Looks like it was knocked over by a poacher's prey.
Well spotted. Let's go on.
You taking me to a church?
It's never a bad time to confess your sins.
What was that?
No idea.
Ah!
You were blocking my target. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Just a scratch.
Probably a splinter.
Are we going after whatever it was?
Let's not push our luck. I don't want our story to end up like the Vaduna chieftain and the hunter.
Okay, let's go.
They built the chapel after the massacre of the Vaduna people.
You still haven't told me how that happened.
The hunter became the chief and moved in with his family. It wasn't the first time that kind of thing had happened. But one thing did happen for the first time. The wounds the bear had inflicted on the real chief were less serious than they seemed. A few days later, he came back and claimed what was his. But the hunter wasn't so sure. He was the chieftain now.
Yes, but the hunter won his new identity by leaving the old chief to his fate.
He betrayed his friend, I agree with you, as did many of the Vadunas. But the rest of the village didn't see it that way. The Vadunas were split into supporters of the new chief and the old one, and, well, you know how it all ended. Eliot, I have a problem. I think Delphine is cheating on me with another man.
Whoa.
Some nights when I lie down next to her in bed, her hair smells of gunpowder. Someone who regularly handles guns is touching her. Do you have any idea who it could be?
An obviously pivotal moment, we have a chance here to confess to Jim, point the finger at someone else, or outright deny it.
That's impossible. Your wife would never do that to you. And what if you're getting the smell of powder on her yourself?
I wash my hands before I touch my wife, Eliot. Don't you?
I don't know. That rookie Dickinson?
Oh, come on, Eliot. It's one thing that she's cheating on me, but don't insult her for Christ's sake.
I'm sorry, Jim. I should have told you before. I don't even know how it started. Jim, please, put the gun down.
Yeah, Jim, put it down. You're late.
Yet again, it seems like Jim was going to shoot Ness, which feels like it's alluding to something, although we know it doesn't happen, but rather he's actually pointing his weapon right behind Ness, and the mysterious man takes us inside the chapel.
You know why they built this chapel?
We know.
Typical Americans. They find that a bunch of crazies from some wacky religion have killed each other, and they build them a church, huh? As if the dead give a damn about their Christian God.
Jim, what's going on?
I told you, it's a surprise.
Who's going in?
He is.
Me?
Trust me.
With no context as to what's going on, we head in the church alone. We can choose whether Ness is a believer in God or not. We see some dead rats littering the floor, a large statue of Mary Magdalene at the center of the church. We take a seat in the confessional booth.
I have a gun pointing at your head. I could kill you right now.
But you haven't. So you're either a big mouth or a coward.
I won't shoot. I'm here to help you.
Yeah?
Look under your knees.
What is this?
To you, just a bunch of scribbles. But to someone who knows what he's looking at, it could be prison bars for Capone.
You telling me Capone wrote down every one of his crimes?
Very funny, Ness. Your financial specialist, Garrison. He'll know what to do.
Why are you doing this?
What do you care? I'm serving you Capone's head on a golden plate. Don't ask questions. Just beat it, Ness. The sooner you set Garrison to work, the sooner all this will be over.
Carmine?
Please, no.
Why?
He threatened my kids.
Capone? No, you're his right-hand man, his chief executioner.
He's lost his mind. He suspects everyone and everything. He has to be stopped. Don't kill me. For my kids' sake.
You remember Don Prescott? 33 years on the force, my first partner. You left his face in such a mess, they had to make him a clay mask so his family could look at him at the funeral.
Capone wanted him dead.
What about Amber Fisher, 15 years old? You held her prisoner for 3 days. She committed suicide only hours before we came to rescue her. I don't need to remind you what you did to her, do I?
I was following orders.
No. Capone orders you to kill. You improvise. You enjoy it.
You can't do this!
Eliot, don't do it. Kill an unarmed man and it'll haunt you your whole life.
I deserve a trial!
We're cops, not killers.
Jesus, Ness, weren't you...
Control your anger.
Weren't you the most honest man in Santa Esperanza?
Whether we choose to kill him or not is obviously a pretty big decision, because it not only affects whether this guy could be alive in the current timeline or not, it also affects the kind of person that Ness is. A lot of these choices we're making are about Ness's personality, and you have to think they're going to pay off at some point.
Only in public.
You don't know what you just started. No matter what monster you're facing, next time you find yourself in a situation like that, control your anger, or you'll be lost forever.
Thank you, Ness. Thank you. You saved me a bullet. And take it easy, Carmine. I'll save the ones meant for your children, too. Don't worry about the damage I made you do to your beloved boss. I'll make it up to him. After all, he needs a new right-hand man now. Thanks for the book.
If you spare him, then Ivankov will show up, and it's revealed that Ivankov is the one that put him up to it.
Go back to Capone. Don't let him suspect a thing. And when I bring him to justice, you'll testify against him.
Yeah. Thank you, Ness. Thank you.
Well done. I made that mistake once. Only once. And it still torments me. Let's go.
Congratulations, Carmine. Great performance.
My kids.
Don't worry. I'm not going to touch them.
Thank you.
I always keep my word.
If Capone finds out what you made me do, he'll kill me.
That won't happen. You have my word.
Thank you.
Did Carmine get in touch with you? How did you do it?
It doesn't matter. Stroke of luck. Now, all we need to do is be careful. See what Garrison can find.
Jim, about Delphine?
Shut it. First we finish Capone. Then we talk.
Alone again, Ness. Wow, don't tell me your friends let you down again. Lucky you got me, huh?
I'm losing my mind.
Next up is the absolute craziest sequence in this game, in my opinion. Every time I play this part, my heart starts racing, I get really sweaty. When I was playing, I would look away from the screen and kind of half cover my face and turn the volume down so I wouldn't get scared because I was so terrified of it. This entire sequence is now in first person and in the form of a nightmare. Everything is dark and we are forced to walk through with limited vision. It is a whole new perspective of this game that we have never seen before. And the first person aspect and flashing lights with the lack of music just makes this part terrifying because you're waiting for something to pop out and scare you.
It's only logical that Dawkins should abandon you. He just told him you're screwing his wife. Honest and moronic. But what about the others? What will they think of you? With everyone, Ness. Maybe it's just that anyone who gets close to you winds up dead. You should try to save her, right? The question is, can you? Do you even want to?
Ness's past is long and complicated and full of demons that the player doesn't even know about and maybe never will know about. And now Alice, the cop from the beginning in the diner, seems to be in danger. Ness is having some sort of nightmare that involving Alice with the case, getting her to do stuff on the phone, has gotten her in serious trouble, and it's his fault and now his responsibility to save her. We don't even know who Alice's father is, but we know that Ness feels some sort of obligation to look after her.
It's funny. You don't mind giving half your earnings to some two-bit thief who walks into your restaurant, but when your friends are in danger...
No, please, no.
The wire was tapped. They broke into my house. Why did you get me mixed up in this?
Alice!
Eliot, this is your fault. Get me out of here.
Hang on, Alice. I'll find you.
Maybe I was too hard on you. Some friends you do help. Like good old Capone. You committed the cardinal sin of messing up this piano. And now, to make up for it...
You're always late, Ness. I'll fail you.
You pal up with him on the condition he donates a tiny fraction of the money he's stolen over the years.
My father asked you to take care of me. Is this how you respect a dead man's wishes?
Very good. You've picked your friends.
Eliot, please.
Say goodbye to the others.
Alice, No! Alice!
This is a nightmare. Has to be.
Poor guys, huh? You're the one that should be in the body bag, not them. By the way, where were you?
We wake up in the morgue next to the body bags of our friends, those we sent out on their final missions. What a chilling scene.
Dr. Dawkins took you to 7.
Delphine, no! Not you!
I was followed, Eliot. From the diner. What are you mixed up in?
Ah, I see. You were breaking up with your secret sweetheart.
Delphine's name is called over the speaker. Eliot begins to imagine the same about Delphine, that his actions have put her in trouble, and sees a ghostly silhouette of her hanging.
Delphine, no! Not you! Don't worry, Delphine. I'm coming!
You'll never learn, Eliot. You'll go on putting all the people you love in danger, won't you? Until you're completely alone.
Oh, God! Delphine, no!
We find Delphine lying dead.
Oh. No.
What are you going to do when you're done crying? Now you don't even have the option of getting drunk.
You're a failure.
He didn't even have the colonies to finish off his goon in the church. I doubt you'll be able to deal with the real problem.
You're a failure. The only thing you ever did right was put me away. How'd you do it, huh? How? Tell me.
That's the spirit, Eliot. The great thing about you atheists is that the no-killing business doesn't apply, right? Die. That's right. Yes. Kill me. Die! You know which part of yourself you're killing, don't you? Die! 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 Die!
Before we move on, I just have to compliment this scene again. It is so jarring the first time you play it because it's suddenly in first person, but it is so well done. You are trapped in Eliot's mind, confronting his demons one by one, his deepest and darkest fears and worries, reliving the day he betrayed his best friend, possibly took a life he shouldn't have, and also the day he took out Al Capone. It also shows you that through all of his flaws, he really does care about Delphine and the potential danger that he puts her in. The horror vibes were kind of expected, but not to this level, and it's all done just really incredibly well. Everything fits really well, all the faces look pretty good and realistic, but not too realistic, so everything has this mild uncanniness to it. It's by far my favorite section of the entire game, and I want to give huge props to everyone who worked on it. This is really, really cool stuff.
Die!
Cool it, Mr. Ness. Alphonse is taking care of that.
You knocked me out. You betrayed me.
Betrayed you? Since when were we partners?
Where is Sophia?
What's going on up there?
That? I think it's modern art. Those things are supposed to be the pillars of Titus Andronicus's palace.
He's going to kill him.
Yeah, most likely. Says here, this is the Shakespearean tragedy that has the most deaths in it.
Talk, you bastard! I don't...
We can't let him kill him before he confesses.
I'm sorry, buddy, but what we can't do is to interfere in Alphonse's plans.
Remember what he did to Burke? In 5 minutes' time, Ivankov will be dead, and your beloved Alphonse will never find his granddaughter.
Come on, you'll need help. Take a rest.
Al, I didn't do a thing. This is all a mistake, I swear.
Are you sure? Because what I found in your submarine makes me think otherwise.
What the fuck did you find?
You keep a register full of names. The names of people you sold to the Ku Klux Klan, to pimps like Abdelkader, or to slave traders.
All right, yes. I make people disappear. Al, you don't know how hard it was to survive after you went away. Santa Esperanza went crazy. The cops, the judges, the other families, they all wanted to destroy your empire. I had to make a living.
What about the children?
What children? I never kidnapped a child. Never!
So you like to take special care of your men's hair, do you? Because otherwise I don't understand why you'd have so much kids' shampoo.
Yes! For Christ's sake, yes! I traffic in children too. Fuck! I'll kill you. But I never kidnapped your granddaughter, Al. Your family is my family.
In one of the cages, we found a girl's shoe. A white ballet shoe with daisies.
Son of a bitch, let me go!
Steady, Alphonse.
It's a lie! It's a lie! He's a fucking cop! How can you believe him?
Take it easy, Alphonse. Take it easy.
I need a name. Just one name. Who asked for the girl? Who?
I don't know. I truly don't know.
You're right, Nikolai. I'm a fucking cop. But despite my reputation, I'm not a good cop.
And what the fuck are you going to do with me?
I put together a file on you years ago when you were working for Capone. You left a family behind in Russia, used to send them money. Are your parents still alive? I'm sure your brother is. And his 3 kids. Or has he had more?
You're bluffing.
Want to take a trip to Russia, Sugar Kid?
I never heard a kid scream in Russian, my friend.
I've never seen her. She told me to find 9 kids for her not long after Al went into the slammer. Not just any 9 kids. They were all the sons of criminals. Corrupt cops, murderers, rapists.
A woman?
She set up a meet in the caves at Rockford. In the darkness. I never saw her face. A week ago she had me meet her again. The same place. The same assignment. Just like 20 years ago. But with new kids. Including Sofia Capone.
What else?
That's it.
There has to be more.
Maybe there's someone else who does business with her. Back in the day, I had a mole working undercover with the Gravediggers men.
You mean Elaine Ganella?
We were all spying on each other. We had to slice up the cake that Al had left behind. A few days after the assignment, Ganella took care of the bodies of 8 kids.
Oh dear God, not again. Did Ganella tell you why?
Ness?
This son of a bitch was behind the case that ended my career 20 years ago. The missing children were murdered. Why? Tell me why, you son of a bitch. Did she tell you?
No. Why should she? I don't usually fraternize with the competition. That is all. I am dead.
You have no idea.
You said that.
Screw everything I said.
I don't know what you think I did.
All right, I know there's a lot going on here. I'm just gonna hit the pause button. I would have loved if you had chosen more unhinged and alcoholic choices in the past that, regardless of what you wanted to do, maybe Ness would just kill him regardless. Like Ness is starting to lose control because he's going down this dark path. That's obviously a dream scenario, not something I necessarily expect from a smaller studio, but it would have been cool to see your choices force you into a decision whether you wanted to make it or not. But either way, Ness has yet another life in his hands, and you get to choose whether or not he ends it. And while in game time, it's only been about 10 minutes since we also had another life in our hands, for Ness, it's been over 20 years.
Lower your gun, you damn untouchable. You don't have the balls to do it, and you know... Yeah, there you go, pussy. You don't have the guts to do shit. I don't know why I told you anything. I knew it was too much for someone like you.
Suddenly, Ivankov's large bodyguard drops down from the sky, killing Ivankov, meaning regardless of what you did, he dies, and getting into a fight with Milton, winning easily.
What the fuck?
He doesn't feel pain.
He's too strong.
man-creature thing has superhuman strength and feels no pain when Capone comes in with a spike from the set and stabs it, which still doesn't take him down. Milton still doesn't want to use his gun, fair play. We all have our principles. But a second stab from Ness deep in the chest seems to be enough to take this thing down once and for all. By the way, we're back at the Hindenburg Hotel. And as we make our way to exit the theater, the entire thing is being lit into flames because people have come looking for Al Capone. Two men are threatening the girl from the front desk, and we can decide whether we go save her or not. It would be pretty crazy and out of character for us to refuse, but you make your choice if you choose to help her. If you choose not to help her, you literally just stand there and watch her die, and then you go out and start shooting anyways. I'm not really sure why this was a choice or what the benefit of not going out was going to be. If you had to go out, save her, and then have to do this next section with some sort of handicap, that would make sense, but as we know, the shooting sections don't have a lot of consequences to losing, so it doesn't really work. It's just overall a very weird choice to have to make, and I can't imagine anyone who on their first playthrough said, no, I'll just let her die. The firefight is long here as well. The main thing that makes it interesting is everyone screaming at Capone and his constant taunting. He is an awful person, but if you love a confident villain who does not know when to shut up, Capone is 100% that guy in this section.
When he starts thinking, he'll scare you even more.
That's the boy who locked me up. Right there. Will you shut up?
We make our way through the hotel in order to get to an emergency cable car, and we even get to play as Al Capone for a bit, mostly so we can use the shotgun from 15 feet out, because that just feels like a very Al Capone thing. At one point, there's a railgun, and Ness sneaks around the outside, and there's this gem of an interaction.
What? You're not shooting anymore? What, I make you cry?
Capone! It's me, Ness!
Life's full of little twists and turns, huh?
Things go crazy. There is so much shooting. It's by far the longest action sequence. At one point, you shoot the guy setting everything on fire and he explodes, and that's pretty neat.
We're not gonna get out of here. So what's the secret ingredient?
We'll get out of here. We have to keep moving.
Shame.
This entire segment takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and it's so relieving when you reach the end. But then this.
Where are we going?
To visit a relic.
Damn.
You remember the November 9th massacre? I arranged a meet with Leo Maldonati in the garage on 72nd and Main. I was alone, but the son of a bitch turns up with 30 men. Fortunately, I brought along one of these beauties. You should have seen the faces on those jacks.
Ness hops in the back of the truck and just massacres people. I think overall we must kill close to like 100 people in these first 2 episodes, just mowing them down. As the gun overheats, Ness makes a dash for his life just to make it to the cable car, where Milton saves him from falling to his untimely death.
Not bad for a couple of has-beens, huh?
Whew. How many did we kill?
More than I've seen in 13 years. Now for some food and... Protect him.
Ness has but a single bullet left, and then there's some rumbling on top of the cable car. Someone has hopped on for the ride.
Holy Christ.
Milton has been stabbed by the masked man creature thing, and we have one last thing we can say to him. And let's be honest, there's only one right answer here.
Powdered licorice, half a teaspoon.
Ray!
Milton and the creature fall from the cable car, but the creature hangs on. Capone tosses you the bullet, and you take aim and take your one shot, hitting it right between the eyes and sending it to the depths of Santa Esperanza down below.
Oh God. Oh God, Ray. Oh God. Oh.
No use crying. We have to focus on finding your granddaughter.
He saved my ass several times. Literally. And I don't need to tell you what a big shot mafioso keeps his ass for when he goes into jail. He saved me.
We arrive back at the Blues and Bullets diner where your journey began, still closed, which I guess destroys the argument that maybe there was a night shift, so it's not really 24 hours, but not really the point. But here we are with our greatest enemy sitting next to us. Al Capone is injured here.
Looks like it's clear. Let's go.
Is this dump safe?
It'll have to do. Besides, they're looking for you. They may not have recognized me. That hurt?
Now what do you think?
I have painkillers at the diner. You can hold on for a few minutes.
Painkillers? Who do you take me for?
A package lies on the front steps.
What is this?
What the fuck?
Holy Christ.
Inside, someone sending a message. A container with 2 eyes. After the credit scene, we go back to the cave with the children. One of them, now missing his hand, thanks to who we can safely assume is, in fact, Sophia Capone.
It's not fair. It's your fault I'm like this. It was your fault. If you hadn't snitched on me, it wouldn't have happened. I was going to be punished. What was I meant to do? It was your stupid fault. If you'd have been quicker, we'd have escaped. Whatever. Who cares anyway? I don't have a hand. They don't feed me. And they gave you a puppy. It's not fair. I haven't eaten anything either since I don't know when. A long time. Neither is Groucho. Poor little thing is so hungry. He's just a puppy. And they cut off my hand. I don't feel good. I don't want to die. We'll get out. You wait and see. I hope so. I miss my mom and dad. And my brother. And my toys. Will you let me play with Groucho? He needs to rest.
He's very weak and...
Hello, my dear. Don't be afraid. I have come to bring a present for your little doggy.
His name is Groucho.
Give it to her. The milk will do him good. He has to grow. He needs to get big and strong. What do we say?
Thank you.
No. Thank you, honey, for being such a good girl. Let's go.
Give it to me, please. I need it more. It's just a dog. I'm sorry, Bruno. You and I can manage.
The kid absolutely loses it at this choice and starts hurling things at Sophia with his one good hand. And when the dog runs into his cell, he kills the dog. But we see this little glimpse of Capone rage in Sophia as the credits roll. Episode 2 is when the game really starts to gain its own identity. Not that the first episode didn't have some supernatural elements to it. You spend a portion of the game in a giant Zeppelin hotel thousands of feet above the city, but the game starts to create its own new set of rules. While it certainly gets a lot darker in tone and certainly throws out a lot more slurs than the first part, it also has this masked bodyguard figure which adds a lot of intrigue. You can't possibly say for certain that he's dead despite the fall because he survived a few impalings earlier. You're also now stuck with Al Capone, your mortal enemy by your side, and the one link that was easing the tension between you two, Milton, is now gone. There's also this story of going back to the past. If you told Dockers you were having an affair with Delphine, is there another conversation between that one and the one with Delphine at the harbor, which was only 2 days later? You technically have a book that sends Dockers and the others to the place where they die, although Ness says it's just a routine thing. And who is Alice? It seems Ness has made a promise to her father to take care of her, but we don't know who that is. Delphine doesn't mention Claire when she visits, who Eliot buys a gift directly for. So is Alice Claire? Or are they two different people? Eliot seems very attached to her, whoever she is, but what's the story? There's not too much going on that you feel overwhelmed, but there's enough going on that you know things will eventually intersect down the road. They kind of are already if you include the nightmare scenes of Ness when he's walking down the hallways, imagining just having relationships with people will get them killed. So really, it's just a matter of how and when. Game 2 was received decently well, but a lot of people were mixed on if they preferred the first or the second. Some people seemed to like the more simple approach of the first episode, others liked how this built off of the narrative. Some people could have done without the shooting, which, fair play, and others felt this part was actually too similar to 1 and that we didn't get enough moving the story forward. My favorite scene still remains the POV hallway scene because it gives you little pieces of information but leaves you with so many questions that you want answers to. And also just shows you how messed up the mental state of Ness is. There's a lot going on. He shouldn't be reacting calmly and calculated through any of this. He should be struggling and having a hard time. And he is, at least internally. So with the tensions rising, the atmosphere getting darker, the mysteries becoming more clouded, what does episode 3 have in store for us? Nothing. No, really, we're done. That's the end of the game. There is no episode 3. Episode 1 came out July 23rd, 2015. Episode 2 came out March 8th, 2016. And Episode 3 never came out. Just when the game started to find its own identity and feel like the story was about to kick into the next level, we never got what happened next. On September 26, 2016, a full year and then some after Episode 2, 2 tweets were sent out. One simply saying no, Blues and Bullets is not cancelled and tagging people who would ask that question. The next saying we are passing through difficult times but the game is not cancelled. If we cancel it, we will advise. Don't worry. A few liked tweets here and there, and in 2017, and on May 25th, 2018, over 2 years since the last episode, one final tweet. No words, just a top hat in tribute of Total Biscuit, who had passed away the day before, presumably as a thank you for all the publicity he had given the game years prior. Googling if Blues and Bullets is cancelled will give you various answers. On September 25th, 2016, a day before the game is not cancelled tweet, a Steam forum post simply reads that the poster had reached out to someone who was involved in the project who claims they haven't been called into work for about a year, and that the company simply ran out of resources. Their website has disappeared, and people began to accuse the company of being shady and doing this intentionally to keep collecting money, even though they were not going to deliver on their promise. The Wikipedia page for the game says a crowd of monsters ceased operations late 2016, but there's no source attached to that as far as I can find to back that up. Although with the years of silence that have followed, it seems pretty clear they're no longer around. But someone still had access to their Twitter accounts 2 years after the fact and felt the need to say thank you and goodbye to someone. I searched a long time, and in my searches found more and more people who were disappointed that the game was never finished. Not just because of the money they spent, although those people did exist too, and that's okay, but rather their love of what they saw in the first 2 episodes. They saw the potential of where the series could go, and with so many questions left unanswered, they wanted more. And quite frankly, I wanted more answers too. So I checked on Twitter, I did some research to see what would pop up. In the opening credits, there are 2 names credited with being directors, and I apologize for the name pronunciations, Daniel Candil and Daniel Castellanos, with the story being credited to Josue Monchan. I found Daniel Castellanos, and while I couldn't find a Twitter page, I did find his LinkedIn page, and according to it, he left A Crowd of Monsters in July of 2016, 2 months before the statement of the game not being cancelled was made. It's important to note that while he could have very well been with the company at the time of that tweet, it's possible he retroactively put the date as July as the time he felt the project really died. From there, he went on to teach game design at various establishments before eventually landing as a producer at Supermassive Games, who you've most likely heard of through their game Until Dawn, although he wasn't with the company when it was released, but it seems he did have a role working on The Devil in Me. From there, I found Daniel, or Danny Candil, who according to his website was the art director at A Crowd of Monsters, and his page says he left the company in June of 2016, 1 month earlier. He then bounced around a few places before finding a home at THQ Nordics, where he is a studio art director and recently worked on the remake or reboot of Gothic, an RPG from 2001, and he does indeed have A Crowd of Monsters in his Twitter bio. I did attempt to message Danny a few times, but the timing was always less than ideal. I was working heavily on other projects when I was first trying to get this one going, and he had just had a kid, and then Twitter sold and all the DM stuff happened, so I don't even think he could see my DMs anyways. I've tried sending a few tweets, a few emails, but unfortunately I don't think anything has been seen, or he's seen it and has chosen not to answer. I would just like to reiterate now, just to put this out there, that if you know these people or you feel like you have the ability to contact them, please do not. It's very possible they all saw my messages and they have just chosen not to respond because either they didn't want to or because they couldn't. I understand, and I'm not mad at all. I'm just telling you right now that I tried, but I don't want these people to be harassed or to have a bunch of people saying, "What happened?" I am not an investigator, certainly not one as skilled as Eliot Ness, and I was going to make this video and just leave it there saying, hey, that's the game, it disappeared, who knows? But I was so curious as to what happened next, I couldn't help but poke around just a little bit more before I wrapped things up. I didn't know who to ask, who to message, who to reach out to. I just needed to talk to someone who is a part of this game to validate the fact that it really did exist and that it's kind of weird it just disappeared. I realized I needed maybe a new approach, and that's when I realized that perhaps by messaging the writers and directors right away, I would run into a lot of resistance, as maybe many questions I wanted answers to may not be allowed to be answered. Perhaps it was a sore subject for some people. Perhaps there was money issues and people felt scammed and ripped off, and so they don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of different things that could have happened. But I just needed to find someone who, even if they didn't have answers, was just as involved in the mystery as I was. So I took a shot in the dark, and it paid off. I have never played the Witcher series. I know it's a gaming sin. I will get to it one day, I promise. But I imagine most of you who heard Eliot Ness's voice and have played the Witcher series immediately heard the voice of Doug Cockle, who is of course most well known for voicing Geralt in that series. I figured Doug was probably too busy to do a full interview. Perhaps at most he'd be willing to answer a few questions for me via Twitter DMs. The worst that could happen is either he sees my request and says he can't talk about it, or he doesn't remember enough about it, and that would be the end of it. A few months went by, and again, no response. Thank you, Twitter DMs, for being annoying. I figured I had my answer. No one knew what happened, and I was never going to find out, so I will just put this video on hold and come back to it when I feel like it's time to wrap this thing up. And then suddenly, I received a DM. Doug had found my message and was willing to talk. And within 2 days, we were in a Skype call together. For the record, this interview was conducted way back on December 14th, 2021. This video took a while because I was still firing up interview requests and working on a ton of other things, and I kept putting this on hold, hoping to find more answers. But if you're seeing this now, that means I have given up and I have decided that there are just no more answers to be found. It's a pretty general interview. We don't just dive straight into the mystery. I asked Doug about the process of how these things go normally, as well as how it went for this project, just so we can get a good, clean baseline for everyone to follow. So without further ado, here is the Witcher man himself.
Hi, my name's Doug Cockle, and I voice Eliot Ness in Blues and Bullets, the video game.
Well, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. This is kind of a game that I'm sure you haven't really heard a lot about in the last few years, and I'm kind of just a random person DMing you, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, first of all.
No problem.
So I guess my first question for you is, do you often get asked about the Blues and Bullets games? Like, has anyone brought it up, I don't know, even in the last 3 or 4 years? Is this something that's kind of pushed away in the back of your mind, or is this something that people still kind of bring up every now and then?
It comes up every now and then, mostly from people who've played the game who, as you said, wonder where it's gone. But no, it doesn't get talked about much. When it first came out, it was in the press and everything, and people were enjoying it. And then it just disappeared. It was a sad thing as well, because I thought it was a wonderful game. I never played it. I watched some gameplay footage, and of course I saw a lot of the cutscenes, because they had a lot of the cutscenes partially animated when we recorded the voiceovers and stuff like that. So I got to see a lot of what was coming. But no, at the time I was still very much teaching full time and doing the voiceover work as well. So I didn't have a lot of time to play games, and I never got around to Blues and Bullets, which is kind of sad. I don't even know if it's still out there. I don't even know if you can still get it anywhere. Do you know?
I think you can. You can. Obviously, there's only the 2 episodes, but I'm pretty sure you can actually still play the first 2. It's been about 6 years since you did your last voiceover for the game. Do you remember anything about the story of the game, anything like that, or is it kind of just all dust in the wind at this point?
Well, I think first of all, I'm not sure what I can and can't say, but I'm pretty sure we recorded more than 2 episodes.
Yeah, there is a tweet actually that I found from you in January 2016 where you said that you did record a 3rd episode.
Yeah, I think there might have even been more. I mean, it's a long time ago now, but I remember some. I don't know if it was, but it felt like endgame play, endgame stuff. But it might have just been the end of an episode. I'm not entirely sure anymore. But I do remember there was a big fight, and I don't remember much about it. Something about an airship or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that in episode 2? Do you know?
The end of episode 2 ends up with a large. I have a recap of the entire story just in case you'd like it.
I didn't do any research before this interview, so I'm just purely going on memory.
It's all good. This is the good stuff. It's genuine, So do you remember how you first heard about the project? Was this something that was brought to your attention, or was it something that you applied for? Because at this point you had already finished, I think, 2 of the Witcher games, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I haven't played all of the Witcher games. It's one of those things that's it's on my list. I'll get to it eventually, and then I'm always too busy. But I recognized your voice immediately when I first started the game, and I don't know if that's what they were going for or not. But do you remember how you first heard about it?
Yeah, I was just. I don't remember the details of it all, but pretty much all voiceover work, especially for games, but yeah, pretty much all voiceover work is the actor is approached either through their agent or through a casting director in the voice production company. It's very, very rare for an actor to approach a games company and say, I really want to be in your game. Although I'm sure it happens. I've done it myself. There was a game, I won't mention it, but I mean, if you follow my tweets, you might make a educated guess as to what it might have been. But I contacted the games company and said, I love this world that you're creating a game out of. I'd really like to be involved. Please let me know if you want me to be involved. And we had talks, we had conversation, and then they just stopped talking to me. So I don't know quite what happened there. Maybe I was too expensive. Maybe they just decided to go with something else. Who knows? But Blues and Bullets, yeah, it was recorded at Outsource Media in the UK, in London. And I don't remember the details. I was approached. I think that it was a case where, I don't remember. Sometimes I get approached because the developers are fans of The Witcher and they appreciate my work and they want a similar kind of voice. They don't necessarily say that, but that's the assumption I make, right. And I'm often right. My career in video games has been largely playing the reluctant anti-hero, kind of character, the good guy who has to do bad things to do the right thing,
right?
Which is very much Geralt, and is a lot like Eliot Ness as well. So it could well have been that they were fans of The Witcher or something else, and they deliberately asked for me. Or Outsource Media, at that time in particular, I was working with them a lot. And, what they often do is when a project comes in, they'll break down all the characters, and then they'll look at all the the actors who they've worked with or who they have samples from, who they think might be right for certain characters, and then they'll put those people forward to the client, and then the client will decide on various things. And at that point, if they've decided on me, for example, then Outsource Media would approach my agent to say, is Doug available and is he interested? And I'm almost always interested because work is work.
Yeah.
Some projects become more of a kind of passion project than others, but yeah. So I don't remember which way it happened for Blues and Bullets. I suspect it might have been a combination of both a little bit, where A Crowd of Monsters, the developer for Blues and Bullets, probably knew about, and when I was put forward by Outsource Media, they liked the idea of it.
Right.
So I imagine that's how I became involved. But it was then a case of, is Doug available and is he interested? So, yeah.
So there's a developer diary on YouTube, and you're in it very briefly, and the voice actor for Al Capone, John Garasio, I believe how you say it, he is in there as well. And in the video, he mentions that he didn't know that he was playing Al Capone until he got to the studio that day. He mentioned that he was like,
I knew who Al Capone was. I knew who Eliot Ness was, but I didn't know I was playing Al Capone till I came to the studio today. But if you're an actor who doesn't know that world, you're going to be at a real disadvantage.
Was that the same for you? Did you not know who you were voicing until you got there, or did you get like a script and you were kind of prepared?
Again, I don't really remember with Eliot Ness. I think I was probably briefed a very tiny amount. That's usually what happens, is they tell you a little bit.
Right.
Sometimes they tell you your character name. Sometimes they just give you a rough idea. They'll say, you're being called in to play a gruff detective in a post-punk world, whatever. And then you kind of go, as an actor, you go, all right, okay, I get the idea.
Yeah.
And then you get more details when you get there. So that was probably the case with Blues and Bullets as well. I'm absolutely certain, because I knew really, I knew straight away what the game was based on and the references it was using. So once I got to the studio, the developers were very open with what they wanted to do, which isn't always the case, especially nowadays. Nowadays, actors often go into a studio, they don't know the name of the character, they don't know the name of the game, they have no idea what they're doing until they get there, and then they don't even know when the game comes out because they don't know what the game was.
Right.
Which is really a problem for us, because we have CVs we want to put things on. Crowd of Monsters was very open with what it was and what it was about, and certainly in my case, they wanted me on board, and I really enjoyed working with them. They were really, really a great group of people. So when the whole project just kind of disappeared, I was like, oh, that's really sad, because they were talking about taking me over to Spain and taking me around the studio and doing some recording over there just for the heck of it and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
that would be really, really fun. You don't often get to see the behind the scenes stuff as the actor in a game.
Right.
As I've only been able to do that a couple times, so it's always fun to do.
When you get the role, you're playing like this Eliot Ness guy. Were you familiar with like Al Capone and all that? Like, were you super familiar? Was it kind of like I know the name but not too in depth, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I have no deep knowledge of Al Capone and his history. I just know that he was a gangster during the Prohibition era, I believe, in Chicago, and he was finally caught, and Eliot Ness was the FBI agent who caught him. And it's all there's a whole movie about it with Kevin Costner playing the Eliot Ness kind of character. And I'm forgetting the name of it. I want to say The Unforgettables.
Untouchables. It's the name of Ness's group, supposedly.
Yes. Yeah. So I think most of my knowledge about Capone is based on The Untouchables, perhaps. But I've seen pictures and stuff. I've seen because wasn't Capone responsible for the Valentine's Day massacre?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So Capone was a name that I grew up kind of hearing about. As one of those one of those things. And I knew that I think he was imprisoned on Alcatraz, and yeah. So the game is all about, you know, later on after. I don't know if I'm giving something away here or not. Should I not say anything?
You can say it.
After Capone is released from prison.
Yeah. The people who are watching the video will know the plot of the game. I'll give them a brief rundown because I don't feel like it's, you know, 6 years old and there's no more episodes coming out. So.
Yeah. So sorry for my kind of leaky memory.
No, it's okay.
It's a while ago now, but I remember thinking at the time it was kind of a wacky premise. Not wacky as in silly, but wacky as in, wow, how'd you guys come up with this? If I remember correctly, I think we first meet Eliot Ness working in a diner.
Yep, the Blues and Bullets diner.
As a cook?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's a retired cop.
Retired cop, working as a short order chef in a diner called Blues and Bullets.
And you go to a hotel where the Hindenburg didn't burn down, and the Hindenburg's been turned into a hotel, and Capone asks Eliot Ness to find his missing granddaughter.
That's right, yes.
Right. It's all coming back.
It is a bit, yeah.
So one of the things at the beginning of the game that they specifically mention is that they had the right to use the Eliot Ness Al Capone name. I don't know if they went maybe legal rights, or if they were just just saying in general, we're allowed to do this, but they also said they wanted to do it in a respectful way. Was there any conversation about this is what the real Eliot Ness was like, or we want you to try to be what he was like, or was it this is your own character, he just happens to have this name?
No, we didn't, to my knowledge anyways. There may have been information that was imparted unofficially or, through direction that led me in the direction of behaviors that Eliot Ness might have exhibited, but there was no conversation specifically about that. It was just the idea of this slightly pissed off with the world ex-cop person who gets dragged back in to this world. And his struggles with that, but also his realization that this is what he's good at, or re-realization, I suppose. Because again, if I remember correctly, when we first meet Eliot Ness in Blues and Bullets, he doesn't want to get involved. He's reluctant to get pulled back into that world, but he doesn't particularly like the world he's living in either. He doesn't like being a short order cook. But it's what he does to make ends meet. So a lot of the game, especially the early part of the game, is about his reluctant involvement in becoming a detective again.
Do you, as the voice actor, kind of feel a little bit like you have to be true to the real Eliot Ness? Because I know that, I'm sure if you're the guy voicing Al Capone, and you're putting on, your Italian accent or whatever, I think that's, people, there's stuff, people know what Al Capone looked like and sounded like. I feel like there's maybe more pressure there. I feel like, the modern person, if you said Eliot Ness, they would be like, who? So did you feel any sort of pressure, or were you just kind of like, this is the role I'm given, so this is what I'm going to kind of run with? Yeah,
definitely the second. I didn't feel any responsibility towards the historical character, the historical person, because this was a fictional, it was a video game, a fiction, based on real people, using them as templates for the story, the narrative, but it wasn't purporting to exhibit the real people. And I think that's what you were talking about, that the publishers and the developers had permission to use the names and to use the basic history of the people. So they had that permission, but it wasn't about accurately portraying those people. So the character that Eliot Ness became for me was what I just described, the reluctant ex-cop being pulled back into the underworld.
The only reason I ask is because the game, there's quite a few characters that you meet and interact with, but Eliot Ness and Al Capone are the only real people in the game. Everyone else, like Eliot Ness's friends, they didn't use any of the real untouchable group. They used completely fake names and everything like that. All of Al Capone's like associates and stuff. So I was just curious if maybe there was something specific about Eliot Ness, like why they had to use his name.
That's a really good question. You'd have to ask the developers that question really to get a good answer. My guess, though, is that as a developer trying to create a game that will be of interest, that will have a hook, that will have something that will help keep players interested in episodes, because that was one thing that was quite cool about Blues and Bullets, is that it was episodic, and a lot of games aren't. Most games, there's a one shot and then there's a sequel and this and that, but they were doing Blues and Bullets like a graphic novel, sort of, or like a comic book, I suppose, is a better way to put it.
Yeah, the way it's described is an episodic alt history noir video game, and then I believe in the developer diary they also say it's kind of like a graphic novel.
Yeah, and you can see that in the visuals. I mean, really, really interesting noir type visuals and stuff. So I imagine that was partly why they decided to have the characters of Eliot Ness and Al Capone. Creates a historical hook, creates something to hang the story off of, and why not?
The Witcher 3 came out May of 2015. Episode 1 of Blues and Bullets came out July 2015, and then the second episode of March 2016. Do you remember if you did these recording sessions before the Witcher 3 DLC, which the name escapes me at the moment, but I'm sure you remember?
I think it was all happening at the same time, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, Hearts of Stone was recorded... No, Hearts of Stone. Sorry. I hadn't started the DLC, I don't think. Hearts of Stone started recording in, I want to say, September or October of 2015. And Blood and Wine, gosh, I may be getting this completely wrong. My memory is Hearts of Stone recorded shortly after Witcher 3 came out. Very shortly after, and Blood and Wine wasn't much further out from that. But I think it was in 2016 I was nominated for a BAFTA for Blood and Wine.
Yes.
So we must have been recording Blood and Wine at least December 2015, early 2016. So I think Blues and Bullets must have been recording in late 2014, early 2015.
And you said they had a lot of the cutscenes and stuff kind of already ready, so that you had something to watch at least?
Yeah, they often, that's how I remember it. There was often a cutscene to look at. Sometimes it was just, basic framing. But I'd be able to see where the gore and where the basic layout of a room was and things like that. Sometimes I was able to see some of the animation. I have images in my head of some of the stuff that I was recording. I can't remember exactly what they were, but I can remember seeing animated visuals. I wasn't recording the voiceover to the visuals necessarily,
right?
But they were being used to help give me a reference for what we were recording.
Did you do episode 1? I know that you did episode 3, obviously after the episode 1 and 2 had already come out, I think. So do you remember if you did episode 1 and 2 in one, like, I don't know if it was multiple sessions or multiple days, or was it like several months in between episode 1 and episode 2 kind of thing?
Well, it's almost always multiple sessions, and sometimes they're divided by multiple months. I mean, big games like Witcher 3, the main game was recorded over the course of about 2.5 years.
Right. I imagine you just live in the studio for a game as big as Witcher.
Well, you do and you don't, because you'll record 3 days in a row, and then you won't record again for 2 weeks, and then you'll record 4 days in a row, and then you won't record for 3 weeks, because you're recording as they get the writing finalized.
Oh, okay.
So it's never a case of all the writing's finished and now we're just gonna bang the whole voiceover out. It's almost never that, at least in my experience for a big game like The Witcher. Blues and Bullets, there were definitely multiple sessions. I don't think we were able to record an entire episode in one session, so I'm pretty sure that there were between 2 and 4 sessions for each episode.
Okay.
But again, it's a few years ago.
Yeah. So for episode 3, you did tweet out, had a great day recording episode 3 of Blues and Bullets yesterday. It was January 6th, 2016. At the end of episode 2, we got a couple of lines, stuff like, they met 20 years ago, looks like someone's trying to tie up loose ends for me, he was eaten alive, and he kills them at the end. He seems to determine to carry out this ritual on individuals with connections to the underworld. And we have no context for any of that. So do you remember vaguely anything that happens in episode 3 for fans of the game that have been kind of hoping for 6 years?
Yeah, well, like I said, I have these vague memories of a firefight that happens at the Hindenburg, and I don't remember if that was episode 2 or if that's something that
That's the last scene of episode 2.
That's the last scene of episode 2. Okay.
Yeah, you escape with Al Capone. Al Capone's worker gets killed at the end by some dude in a mask, and then I believe you go to the diner and you get a package with someone's eyes in it.
Ooh, I don't remember that. But,
It's a dark game. There's a lot of gore in it.
Yeah, there really is. And I seem to remember there were hints at monsters as well.
Yeah. Not in any scenes that you were in.
I don't remember, to be honest. I just remember that there was something about people who weren't people anymore, or something. Gosh, my memories of the game are very, very mixed up, I think.
Right. And if you haven't played the final product, then that also probably doesn't help a lot, because there's probably missing patches in there too, or things that you said that you don't know the context to.
I don't remember anything about episode 3, or even whether or not I recorded it.
Well, you tweeted that you did. So.
I did, okay. Well, then I recorded it. But I don't remember anything about it. I don't know why that is. Or maybe I do remember things about it, but I just don't. Like I remember specifically the diner, and I remember specifically the firefight on the Hindenburg, and I remember seeing animated sketches of it.
The episode 1 and episode 2, they both begin and end with a young child, and there's like large robed figures with like antlers, and it's definitely some kind of ritualistic thing. But we never actually see the worlds combine. So I assume that's what like the rest of the episodes we're going to cover. It's like, because part of Eliot Ness's journey is not only helping Capone, but a long lost line of lost children that missing cases that he never solved. And that's like what he wants to do.
Yeah, I remember something about that. All I can remember about episode 3, and I don't know if I'm making this up out of a fevered memory or if this is real, I seem to remember there was some kind of satanic cult kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
That's where the monster thing is coming from. I think that people were being possessed or asking to be possessed.
Okay.
Or there was something in that. There's something in that. There was, it got very, in my memory, I remember it getting very otherworldly.
Right.
And I think that it was about Satan worship and the kids. And the kids were being used to fuel rituals, like you said, but there were sacrifices in there as well and things like that.
Yeah.
I remember recording something that was there was a lot of gore. There were a lot of body parts. There was a lot of ritual references. And Eliot was there.
Yeah.
again,
which would make sense if you remember that. That would make sense that Eliot was there.
yeah, because it was because he was investigating, and he was in this house.
Okay.
Or something, or a warehouse. He was in a place, and he was going.
That might be the first episode you're thinking of, because in the first episode you go to a guy named Carl Boccarini's house, who is a former person who knew Al Capone. He deals with fake IDs, and he's like at the staircase, and he's impaled, and his hands are cut off, and his eyes are missing, and all this stuff. And then in the second episode, you're on a submarine, and you find a pit where they were having like dogs against humans, and there was pit full of bodies and stuff.
Yes.
Fun memories, you know.
Yeah, good
images.
memories, good times. Yeah.
So you remember something about ritual stuff, but you're not sure where you can place that.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Hey, no, you know what? It adds to the mystery of it, though, right? Because, you know, it's one of the greatest cliffhangers in gaming that we're never going to get solved.
Well, the thing I wonder is if they recorded what I heard, and I think I may have looked this up at some point as well, or saw something about it. But what I heard was that for whatever reason, the publishers that were behind A Crowd of Monsters pulled out, and so Crowd of Monsters had to fold because they just had no money to continue.
Right.
Again, that's just what I remember. That might not be entirely the truth. But what I never really understood was why, if we, I'm pretty sure we recorded all of episode 3. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And possibly a bit more, because I was anticipating them coming out as well.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been anticipating that if there wasn't something on its way. I think they can't have been too far off from being able to release episode 3.
Right.
So there might, in somebody's hard drive somewhere, be an episode 3 that just needs extra funds to get it finished.
Right.
In fact,
the crowd of sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the case. You know, unless some deal between the publishers and the developers meant they had to destroy whatever was left.
Yeah, the Crowd of Monsters Twitter account, it has the last 2 tweets on it. The second to last one was from September 26, 2016, which at this point is already half a year after the second episode came out, that just said, "We are passing through difficult times, but the game is not canceled. If we cancel it, we will advise, don't worry." And then the next tweet that they put out was 2 years later. It was a picture of a top hat for a YouTuber named Total Biscuit who had passed away, which is actually how I discovered the game. But they never actually said the game was canceled, and I've seen things that said, well, the developer has gone under, and that seems pretty obvious now, but there's never been like a telltale sign that, like, yes, this is in fact done forever, right? They've never said anything online or Twitter, so I think that's probably where the mystery comes from.
Yeah, well, it is a mystery, isn't it? I mean, I certainly don't know what happened to Crowd of Monsters. I think what I mentioned before might have been, you know, 4th or 5th hand information that may or may not have been true. But you know, if we're going to talk about mysteries, then you know, what about the conspiracy theory? I'm creating it now.
Okay, here we go. Good clickbait.
In fact, there was never going to be an episode 3, and the cliffhanger was manufactured.
Ooh. This is good. We're gonna drag up the clickbait. We're gonna just. Did you actually ever hear about the project being canceled, or was it just you were called in, you did episode 3, and then you never got called back, and you're just left up in the air like everyone else?
I think that's more the case, is that it just stopped happening. And in the back of my mind, I did wonder what had happened to it. And I think I did do a little bit of research. I think I did go and look and see what had happened. And I may have run across the same tweet that you've just mentioned. And I just assumed, after nothing more was really forthcoming, that they'd gone under. Again, it was really sad because they were a really good team. every session I went in to record, we had a great time. You know, they were really lovely people, knew what they wanted. They were really kind to me. And I was looking forward to, you know, that continuing relationship and the game.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to know what actually has happened, but only because I like them. And
yeah, I was just asking, like, did you ever think there was a chance when you were doing it, because it was a new episodic format, that you weren't going to get to see the last episodes come out, or did you kind of just assume, yeah, we'll see them eventually?
I think I assumed we would just, you know, see however many episodes were intended eventually.
Yeah.
Because that's the way you go into a project like that. You don't go in going, we're never going to see the end of this. You go in going, this is going to be a great journey. Can't wait to see what the end is. So yeah, it was much more that.
I'm sure you've been a part of projects before that have been canceled kind of midway before?
Only this one.
Oh, really?
I think, yeah. I can't think of any games or other projects that were stopped midway through the journey I understood we were going on. That doesn't mean that didn't happen, because, you know, developers, especially today, they're incredibly secretive about what their intentions are.
Yeah.
And actors are often the last ones to know what those intentions might be. For potentially good reasons. I mean, there have been cases of actors, you know, really shooting developers in the foot by accidentally leaking information that they were trying to hold close to their chest. Right. So I can see why developers want to, you know, try to keep those in the know in a very small circle. So yeah, as far as I know, I've never been involved in any other project that has just suddenly stopped mid-flow.
And you're definitely not confirming right now exclusively this interview that Witcher 4 is coming out soon, right? Just no.
Well, all I can say about A Witcher 4 is that CD Projekt has said that they would be stupid not to continue that brand. So I think there will be A Witcher 4. I certainly don't know any details. Someone told me recently, and I haven't seen any proof of this yet. I haven't gone looking for it, but somebody told me that somebody from CD Projekt said that they were working on A Witcher 4, but I can't confirm that because I haven't seen it myself. Somebody told me that.
Would be interesting if they called you in and said, we're not going to tell you much about your character because we don't want you to leak anything, but you may have played him before.
No, with Witcher, I always know.
Yeah, I think you knew on that one.
Yeah, that one I know about. I recorded something recently, though. I mean, I think this is a good example. I recorded something recently, and all I can say is that it was a Japanese game, or, you know, the original voice work was in Japanese, and it looks like a great game. And I voiced a narrator character in it, and to this day I have no idea what game it is, and I didn't see much of the art either. So if it comes out and an advert or trailer or something comes out, I still won't know what it is. So yeah, whatever that is. But I mean, that's what I mean about, you know, today actors are often very much in the dark about what it is they're working on. But with The Witcher, now CD Projekt just calls me up and says, right, we're on.
Let's go, do it again. Well, that pretty much wraps up all of the questions I have for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've already been extremely generous in what you've given me, and I really appreciate that. Is there just anything you want to say, like closing words about Crowd of Monsters, Blues and Bullets, anything like that? Just in a sense of what the project was and what you kind of hoped for it, and, you know, missing it, I guess. I don't know. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for doing this. Ironically, we've been talking about secrecy, and I don't even know your real name. You're just Ghost Boy. So, and that's okay. We can keep it that way. I don't mind. But I think that the fact that you're doing this tells me that there are people out there who would like to see the continuation of this game. I mean, I confess I haven't really thought about it much in the last few years because it did just disappear. But if there is an appetite for it out there, then I hope that those people involved with A Crowd of Monsters and Blues and Bullets development in the past see this and feel the love and find some way to get episode 3 and more out to those fans of the game. I think that would be awesome. So
if they came calling, would you say yes?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed working with them, and I liked where that game was going, so I'd like to see where it would continue to go. And I'd certainly want to be involved, yeah.
Kind of an interesting parallel where you voiced the character Eliot Ness, who, is trying to solve the case that's haunted him the past, the only thing that has left unfinished in his career. And now this project, the Blues and Bullets episodic game, the one thing that you never got to finish, the only thing that's ever stopped halfway through.
Well, there you it
all comes full circle eventually, right?
I think, I've experienced this in my life a little bit. I do find that somehow the universe pulls me towards things that end up having weird significance or whatever. Just as an example, long before I voiced the White Wolf in The Witcher, I had a fascination for wolves and loved wolves, and I have a tattoo of a howling wolf on my shoulder. So, whether life sometimes, I'm sure that's not just me. I'm sure other people have experienced that, where it just feels like serendipity, So the Blues and Bullets thing, yeah, maybe there's a bit of a weird universe energy serendipity kind of thing happening there.
We're gonna go on a full investigation here. I went to film school for 2 years, and my last year was specifically documentary. So I'm jumping on this thing. I was like, I'm finding the answer to this mystery one way or another.
Excellent. Well, let me know what you find out.
Certainly.
Find out as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Extremely generous of you. I know that you've got stuff going on, and to answer, random DM from just a fan who just wanted to talk about stuff and to give up so much of your time. I extremely appreciative, and I thank you so much for that.
Hey, no problem. I love the games industry, and I love the people who love the games industry. So I'm always very happy to talk with people about, my experiences and especially about things that people love. And it was clear that this was something you had a passion about.
So there you have it. Doug Cockle may have very well recorded a third episode, but the details are fuzzy. He himself has no idea what happened to the project, but he clearly desires to see it brought back, or at least to get answers. He remembers the firefight on the Hindenburg and says something along the lines of, "I remember them not being people anymore," which is kind of hinted at with the masked bodyguard, but there's not really any dialogue in episode 1 or 2 that I think he could have been thinking about when it comes to stuff like that. I originally thought that perhaps his tweet on January 6, 2016 was actually for episode 2, but that would also mean they only had 2 months to get all the audio ready, and I don't know how plausible that is because I don't know how game design works. So I'm currently led to believe that there was an episode 3 at least partially recorded. That being said, Doug's memory also seems to cut off at exactly where episode 2 ends, and while I'm not blaming his memory because I don't remember what I ate for dinner last week, so I wouldn't expect Doug to remember an indie game he recorded in the middle of one of the biggest video games of all time, the only evidence we have that an episode 3 was recorded was his tweet. And all I'm saying is that in a court of law, that would not be enough proof. Before we go any further, I just want to say a quick something. My interview with Doug was in late 2021, and last year, in June of 2023, Doug revealed that he had recently been diagnosed with prostate cancer. His latest update says he was doing well, he was ongoing treatment, but said things looked good for the future, and since then he hasn't really mentioned it. Part of his message to fans that I really want to amplify is that men over 50 should be getting checked, and you should also consider getting checked sooner if you have a family history or are considered high risk. I'll even take it a step further and remind you that the last tweet by A Crowd of Monsters was a tweet in memory of Total Biscuit, who passed away at the age of 33 from bowel cancer. And another sentiment that he often repeated in his final years was that if you have symptoms, even if they are embarrassing, it is so important to go speak to medical professionals to check and make sure everything is okay and that it's not something serious. Early detection of cancer can save lives, and not just to any older viewers out there who might be watching, but anyone watching. If something is off and you're not addressing it, please go get it checked. Do it for our friend Doug. One of the links Doug tagged in a later tweet was Prostate Cancer UK, so in honor of our good friend Doug and his fight, and also as an apology for really picking his brain about something that happened so many years prior, and also as a way to say thank you for being so generous with his time and being such a lovely guy to talk to, I have donated $100 to the organization, and I encourage anyone who has enjoyed Doug's incredible work over the years to do the same, or even just donating a few dollars to a local cancer charity. I'm sure he would appreciate it, and I would as well. Doug, if you're watching this, thank you, and I promise I'll play The Witcher soon, but it's gonna be weird now because I've talked to you before. Now, there was no way I could reasonably expect Doug to remember vivid details about the games, but in some ways it was reassuring to know that someone else who was directly involved in the project also wanted to know what happened. Unfortunately, I didn't share Doug's optimism that the game would ever find its ending, but I did want to know more. Even if it wasn't the game's resolution, I just wanted something. On the credits of the opening sequence, it reads, "A story by a crowd of monsters and Josue Monchan," and later on it credits him for being the writer. If Josue was credited as the writer, perhaps he would have the answers I was looking for. After a few attempts of DMing, I got in touch with Josue, and I asked if he was available or interested in speaking, and these were the replies I got.
Sorry for the late reply. Thanks for your interest in Blues and Bullets. However, I was just a freelance writer, not part of the studio, and everything I could tell you about the business part of the project would be secondhand. Besides, I'd feel pretty weird talking about the game without asking the studio first. Have you tried to get in touch with any of the actual founders?
When I told him I couldn't get in touch with anyone, and that Doug had recommended that I talk to someone at OMUC, which I didn't think was going to lead anywhere, so I didn't, he responded, "Probably they're as lost as I am," and we left the conversation with him saying that he would try to reach out to some of the other members to see if they'd be comfortable with him talking. Unfortunately for me, Josue isn't a big Twitter user, and that was the last contact we had. I never got a response, and I didn't want to pester him. However, it did give me one answer. He, at most, was unsure of what had happened, admitting he was lost. Again, please don't go out of your way to spam him with texts or links or anything like that. In a weird way, it did give me a little bit of closure. At this point, I re-emailed a few people, tried a few more that I hadn't previously, but the trail was cold. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not much of an investigative journalist. I have far too much anxiety to be pushy about this. So most likely, this is the end of the road for me. Perhaps someone will find the answers where I couldn't. Maybe someone watching this worked on it or knows someone that does. I don't want to harass anyone as much as I want answers. I don't want people to be bothered with floods of DMs or requests or hey, watch this video or anything like that. But on the off chance that anyone is watching who has answers for me, I would love to do a part 2 just to give people some resolution. But again, I don't want to do that at the cost of harassing former employees of a crowd of monsters. I'm sure it's a sore subject for everyone involved. If for some reason you have some answers or you were involved in the project and you're okay with talking to me, feel free to tweet at me or send me an email. All my links and stuff are at realityescape.ca. Blues and Bullets came to a very unceremonious end, a cliffhanger never to be resolved, a story unwritten, and a lot of people left in the dark, including those who worked closely on the project. But at least we can talk about that. The game highlights some main choices on the front page, kind of like how Life is Strange does. They have the important decisions and the not so important decisions. So presumably, these were the ones that were going to matter the most moving forward. First, we have how Eliot treated the customer in his diner. Then, if we shot up Al Capone's, how we ask Capone to repay us for finding his daughter, whether we choose to be sober or drunk, how we treat Delphine in that conversation, aka brushing her off or trying to continue the conversation. For episode 2, we have how we react to the breakup, what we tell Jim Dockers, whether or not we kill Carmine, whether or not we kill Ivankov, whether or not we save Susan, and the last thing we say to Milton. What I really like about this list, and I think is really cool, is that they're all listed as emotions, like paternalistic, calm, demanding, except for Susan. She's just Susan. But for everything else, we don't really know how these choices would have played out, so I have to think that the way they affect Ness's character is the most important thing. If you don't kill someone like Carmine or Ivankov, they both immediately die anyways, but it's not by your hands. I know people don't often love that kind of stuff. They think it's cheap for someone to die anyways, but if the intention was always, how does this affect Ness's mentality and his character and his sanity, then I think it's great because you're molding the man that Ness is becoming, and you can choose whether or not he gets to where he wants to be, or whether his anger gets to control him instead. The main thing that changes with the drunk stuff and the Docker stuff is really just the voice in the dream sequence, which is really cool. There's not a lot of stuff like that in this game, so I love that it really adds to that because it makes you feel like the game is paying attention at least at some point. I can only assume there was going to be more of this stuff as the game went on, but it's hard to say. The last thing we're left with is a small preview of what episode 3 was going to contain, and I will play it for you in its entirety.
They met 20 years ago.
Eliot, whose side are you on?
Looks like someone's tying up loose ends for me.
Tell me straight, you killed him, didn't you?
He was eaten, alive.
Put those instincts to work, Ness. Just when I thought we were getting closer to Sophia.
He kills them at the end. He seems determined to carry out this ritual on individuals with connections to the underworld.
You said you'd find her, Ness. That you'd save her. That you'd bring her back to me.
There's not a whole lot to gather from this, but if I was making a guess, this is what it would be. Capone is pretty hurt by the end of episode 2, and Delphine is a nurse. I think the line of whose side are you on is Ness bringing Capone to Delphine on the down low for some treatment, and I think the tell me straight you killed him line is Delphine asking Capone if he killed Dockers. There's probably meant to be another ritualistic killing much more like Boccherini, and it's someone that Ness was going to question next. That's all I can really piece together. We aren't given enough to know where the story was going, just that it was going to move forward. Episode 3 is labeled Mourning the Dead. Episode 4 is Behind the Mask, presumably the big masked guard coming back to life. And episode 5 is The New Untouchables, which I'm guessing is Ness's new task force involving maybe Capone or Alice or some other characters we haven't met. Regardless, we won't get to see how this one plays out. There are so many unanswered questions. Who is Alice? Do we ever get to meet Claire? What really happened to Vittorio? What is the monster that attacked Boccherini and later Milton? Who was holding the kids captive? Who were the other kids? Do Ness and Delphine get together? What happens if you stay sober? What happens if you take every drink you can? It's possible that none of these questions were ever going to get answered anyways, and that we were just going to end up with a very disappointing ending. But we never even got the opportunity to see that. But look, if there's one thing they can never take from us, it's bubblehead mode. Look, it's not everything, but it's something. It wasn't a big AAA game that got taken off the market right after it came out. It wasn't this huge deal. It was just a game that never got to be a game. There's a world out there where this game was completed and it's still being played and recommended to this day. And I do think had the game been completed, it would have been received positively. As it stands right now, only 15.4% of people have the achievement for finishing episode 2, with 16.8% getting the achievement for finishing the 5th chapter of episode 2. Some people literally gave up 10 minutes before the end. And it's hard because a lot of people now are going into it and thinking, I need to get my money back because this is an ending. It's a hard lesson to learn, but Blues and Bullets might be the reason that only large-scale companies or indie developers who have a full-time job on the side can do these kinds of releases. On one hand, you get your game out a bit at a time, you get some money to fund the next part. But on the other hand, what do you do when the money runs dry partway through? If the project isn't mostly funded from the beginning, this is the worst outcome. A game lost. A potential squandered. This used to happen with our favorite TV shows. They would disappear and leave on a cliffhanger. Now it's happening with games. Do I think the lack of communication was intentional? No, I don't think so. Maybe that's naive of me, but I truly feel like they were just holding on to everything they could, and then before they knew it, it had slipped away, and maybe they felt like it was too late to make things right. It can be hard to let go, and this game doesn't feel cookie cutter or formulaic like it was a cash grab. It has love in it. You can feel that. Do I think that people have a right to be upset that they didn't get what they paid for? Absolutely. I saw a lot of people saying that they would never buy an episodic game unless every part was out, which really ruins a lot of the fun and mystique in my opinion, but also even the major game developers don't feel safe anymore. Anytime I hear about a game, I've stopped looking forward to it coming out. I just shut it off in my brain until a release is announced, and even then sometimes the game is not what was promised. Plenty of episodic games have still been really fun to go back and experience, even without the episodic element, just binging it all in one go. Life is Strange, the Walking Dead game. They're all still fun to go back and play. But Blues and Bullets isn't a game I can ever recommend to anyone, and that really sucks, because I want to. I want to talk about it. I want people to see the potential that I saw. We didn't get a few trailers and teasers and then a cancellation. We got some of the game. That's a relatively new thing. Before, it used to be TV shows like Firefly and the OA that just ended and didn't get proper closure. But now that gaming is more and more popular and bigger, we're starting to get those problems in there too. I don't think we'll ever have closure on this game. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I get an email tomorrow with every explanation I could ever want so I could tell you all about it. But I really feel like this is the end of the road. It's been 8 years, and this video may very well be the thing that people find when they think to themselves, I wonder whatever happened to. So if that's you, I wish I had better news for you. The potential was great, the mystery was set, but not all mysteries are meant to be solved. So unless we hear differently, here lies the end of Blues and Bullets. Is it weird having such a long interview not talking about The Witcher?
Well, yes, it is. One of the weird things about it is actually it has to come up because it's so intimately tied into my work and my timeline of my work and things like that. But most interviews I do are about The Witcher. So to talk about a different game entirely is a little bit, it's fun actually. Another game I did came out recently called Tales of Iron, and we did an interview thing for that as well, and that was fun because it's just talking about a different game, a different experience. It's always nice to take a little different journey.
Not to say that you don't love The Witcher. It's just nice to change things up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, having marmalade on your toast instead of peanut butter.
Right. It's just, it's different.
It's a metaphor for you. Or is that an analogy?